Who and what was said to you that was like the most influential thing in your life that you can recall?
John Hale. The guy was just unbelievable. And he welcomed me to the team. He said, "Yeah, I'm John Hale. They call me Lumpy." He said, "Welcome to the team." He looked me in the eye and he said, "Do what needs to be done." So I'm stupid. So 2 days later, I went to him and I'm like, "Hey, I'm looking, what do I need to do?" And he goes, "What did I tell you?" He said, "Do what needs to be done." He goes, "Then do what needs to be done." If I got to tell you, I can tell you, but I'd prefer if you looked around you and you do what needs to be done. And that means if you walk by the trash can and it's full, empty the daggum trash.
You're listening to The Hot Wash by Born Primitive Tactical. I'm Bruno Fallon. I've spent my 4-decade career in some of the most elite units in the United States Special Operations community, where I learned that elite operators aren't made overnight. They're forged through hardship, discipline, and relentless drive. In each episode, I sit down with the most accomplished and innovative leaders in special operations, industry, coaching, and athletes of all disciplines. Let's jump right in. All right, everybody, welcome back to The Hot Wash. I'm still Bruno. I've got a guest here that we've been trying to deconflict schedules for a while. I feel very fortunate to get him here. Anybody that sees him that's watching this on YouTube knows who it is. It's Sergeant Major retired Kyle Lamb. Kyle, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. I'll give, for those followers that we have that don't know Kyle's background, I know we have a lot of tactical athletes, human performance, and law enforcement people. Kyle comes from the same cut of cloth of most of my guests from the military, 21 plus years of service, nearly all of it in special operations, nearly all of it in the National Mission Force, extremely accomplished. Been in, every major campaign of your era. And the one thing that I think a lot of people know Kyle for is the business he formed post-service, which was before the onslaught of everybody doing it, Viking Tactics, VTAC. And then one thing I'll say, and we'll come back to this and talk more about it, but you probably created the most copied item ever that goes on a weapon, and that's the VTAC sling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing, I rolled with nothing, but I still think I roll with that.
Yeah.
But so anyhow, welcome, Kyle.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad that Samantha was able to, she is
persistent.
Yes. She is like I got a blue healer.
Yeah.
She's like my blue healer. She stays on you until you give her an answer. So good for her. She's awesome.
No, she's great. You and I were just talking off camera about Norm Hooten, and that's Courtney for him. And you got to have one, right? Because you and I are talking, but I'm kind of like, hey, whenever it works out. So Samantha has my schedule, she has your schedule, and here we are, brother.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into something right off the bat because it really interests me and everything. We're going to come back to the military and Viking Tactics and all that, but I really want to talk about the books. And I mean, I've got one right here, and thank you for signing this to me, Leadership in the Shadows. I honestly, to be honest with you, because of the pace I've been going at, did not realize everything you had out and how good it is and how well it's received. And you got one coming out. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. So Leadership in the Shadows is actually my third book. So I had Green Eyes and Black Rifles, which was a carbine book, which I wrote most of that while I was in combat. So I would write before I went to bed, I would sit down and that's how I cleared my head so I could sleep. And I would just start going through, okay, what do I want to write in this book? So that's how that book came about.
So wait a minute. There is an actual secret to learn how to sleep.
Actually, I've kind of figured it out lately. Maybe we can get into that because I might be able to help some of the guys out there that have trouble with, I'm an old Army guy as well. And there's some struggles physically that we go through. Most of them are between our ears. And we can get into that a little bit later.
Yes, sir.
So the second book I wrote is called Stay in the Fight. It's a pistol book. And then the third book was the Leadership in the Shadows. Some folks will be upset with me because it's taken me so long to get this next book out. However, I wrote another book that was not released. I'm still hoping it gets released, but I wrote a fiction. And
really,
I wrote that for fun because my wife read it. And she's like, we can't put this out. It's too violent. And I'm like, that's why it's good.
That's right.
So I'm still hoping I can convince her to let that book come out. It's called Night of the Long Knives.
Oh, hell yeah.
Night, Knight. And it's if you're a fan of Jason Casper, of course, Mr. Carr.
Yep.
Jack Carr.
Jack Carr.
It's not exactly like their books, but obviously it's a thriller and there's a lot of death and destruction of the right people in that book. So
Love it.
anyway, while I was working on that, I went down, I don't want to say a rabbit hole, but I decided I would read the Bible from front to back,
Really?
which is kind of an undertaking.
It's a big undertaking.
And as I did that, I didn't read the Old Testament and then the New Testament. I read the Old Testament and the New Testament at the same time. So I'd read the Old Testament and then I would read the New Testament. And as I went through that, I've been a Christian my whole life. Doesn't mean I'm perfect and doesn't mean I haven't, floundered a bunch. But I got done with that. And there was these people that I met when I read through that amazing book. And I was like, why have I never heard of Ehud the assassin? At least that's what I call him. Ehud, who made a dagger. And then he ended up killing King Eglon with this dagger, the dagger he made. And I make knives. So I do forging and make tomahawks and knives and stuff. And other stories like Joshua and how he had to, take over from Moses and then take God's army and start going out and crushing people. And some of this is kind of, I don't want to say it's gallows humor, but it really spoke to me as a soldier, because when Joshua took over and they crossed the river and they set up their MSS before they went into Jericho, I don't know if you know this or not, but do you know what he made his army do before they went into Jericho?
I do not know.
They all had to get circumcised.
Really?
So think about that. Think if we went on a deployment overseas and Colonel Miller comes in, he's general now, but he was a colonel at the time. And he said, all right, boys, or Mark O'Neill coming in and saying, we're all getting circumcised before we do this mission. And I was like, whoa. Now I didn't put that part in the book. Actually, I did. And my wife took it out. She's really helped me with this book. Her walk is much tighter with Jesus than mine is, but that's a good thing, as we're on equal footing there as far as being saved. So not to be a preacher or anything here, but I started telling those stories to people and I'm like, man, have you read about Ehud the assassin? That's what I called him. Like I said, he was left-handed. I mean, there's just a lot of really cool stories about this. Or King David, we all hear about, David going and killing Goliath. Well, that wasn't just a dude going up there and slinging a rock and killing this guy. He cut his head off with Goliath's own sword. And then he held up this greasy hair in his hand. I mean, think about that. Like you're cutting a dude's head off. That's like beyond ISIS. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But then we get to I wanted to tell some of the other stories, the leadership stories, like him going out there and having Bathsheba. Okay, that's not the story. The story is Uriah the Hittite, her husband. Now think about this. Think about, he not only had sex with Uriah's wife and got her pregnant, but then to cover up that, he sent Uriah to be killed on the front line.
Got it.
Think about that. Think about, like, as a leader,
right?
That's terrible. He's one of his mighty men, and he sends him off to
and discards him.
Get killed. So we wrote this book, and I say we because my wife and I worked on it together. I would write the chapters, and then she would X through them and say, start over, because, that wasn't sticking with our mission. And our mission is to reach the unreachable. So when I say that, and I'm just going to use you as an example. I don't know what your walk is with, as your spiritual walk, but if you look at a book and Kyle Lamb wrote it, maybe you'd read it.
Maybe you'll pick it up and dive into it.
Pick it up. If it was some guy that's some nationally acclaimed preacher, you'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I got time for this, but maybe you'll pick this book up. At the end of every chapter, there's a lessons learned, HOTWASH, like the name of this podcast. There's a HOTWASH that goes with that chapter. And then there's battlefield reflections where I talk about, how that chapter means something to me and some of the things that I was involved with on the battlefield. Is called The Next Mission. And it's a historical fiction because these stories were not told completely in the Bible, but the story was there. We just never got to see it. Benaiah was one of David's guys as well. And Benaiah was this just awesome dude. And just the story of his life as he went through. Have you heard of Benaiah?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that Benaiah did was on a snowy day, he went into a pit with a lion and killed it. That's all the Bible says. And it's like,
that's it. That's the story.
There's more to that. So I wrote it like, why did he go in a pit? Didn't have a gun.
Right.
He went in a pit with a dagger and his sword, and he killed this lion. And it was on a snowy day. So what that said to me was that maybe he had to go that day because he could see the tracks. And more importantly, everybody else could see the tracks. So now he had to stand up, be a man, go in that pit. Maybe he could have walked past that pit before because you couldn't see the tracks. Now it's a snowy day. He had to go in that pit. So it made him answer for his bravado and go in there and do it. And we see that in our line of work too. We got some guys that are like beating their chest and I did this, I did that. And then all of a sudden we get called out and they're like, oh, look at the time. I got to go. My wife's got an appointment or whatever.
Right.
And then there's other guys that are like,
let's go. Let's
here
roll.
I am. Send me. You've seen our wall. That really spoke to me, that story. But anyway, that book is, it's actually at the unit as we speak, getting redacted, air quotes there.
Got it.
I don't know what they can redact from the Bible, but there might be some stuff that I put in there that they might want to take out. All of my books have been approved by the unit, so I've never had any.
No, that's awesome. And the one thing I want to jump on wholeheartedly here. People have heard me rant about a few things, and one of them is, book writers, but you're doing it exactly the right way. First of all, I'm excited about this book. Just everything you've told me, I better get a first edition.
Oh yeah.
But no, I mean, if you submit it to the unit and they approve it and it's out there, it's the way you stay in good graces with everybody, but it's also clean on the mind. I mean, to me, just like this podcast, when they asked me to do this podcast, I said, rule number one, we're not doing war porn. I'm not talking about what I did on the X.
Yeah.
It's nobody's business. That's yours, my business in private time. So I love it. And I absolutely love the concept of what you're talking about in this book, because you're exactly right. I've always, and I've never done it, confession, I've always wanted to read the Bible end to end, but I have never had a point in my life where I could say, I'm going to take the next month and all the white noise can go away, because I really want to focus on it. I want to do exactly what you did, is do the deep thinking on it.
You better take more than a month.
Yeah. How long did it take you?
It probably took me 3 months, because when I went through the Bible, I was making notes too. Like, what now? Wait, now how does this, like, I'll give you an example. And I didn't plan on this being a biblical podcast, but I think that, there's a lot of Christians that run in the ranks of the units that we've been in. And when I was reading, I read about a lady who was a prostitute. Okay. So, of course I'm like, she's a prostitute and her name is Rahab and she lives in Jericho. And when Caleb and Phineas went there to do their reconnaissance, they met her, and she already had been told by God that this was going to happen. And she said, would you I'm with you. Will you save my family? And they did. And they were the only ones that survived in Jericho. Now think about that. When they marched around that city and then the walls fell down and everything, every man, woman, and child was killed in that city except for Rahab's family. Rahab is, I should say, David is a descendant from Rahab.
Really?
Which puts Jesus as a descendant from the prostitute named Rahab. So we're the sick. We're the ones that need the doctor. You know what I'm saying? Guys like you and I, there's a lot of baggage that we carry that we sometimes need help with. And that's, when I read that, I was like, if Rahab, the prostitute who sold her body for money, or shekels or whatever they were at the time,
right?
If she can be saved, can I be saved? Of course, later on, Jesus comes, dies for our sins, and the rest of the story there. But yeah, reading the Bible if you look at it like you're just going to read it just to read it, then don't read it.
No. You need.
But if you're gonna absorb it, and if you, at the beginning, when this guy begat this guy, begat this guy, begat this guy, that's important, because our lineage is important. When I think back to our unit, it's important that Charlie Beckwith is in my lineage, because there's probably no other guy in the military at that time that could have started that unit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
Exactly.
I look at what you did as a pilot. There's things that they're doing in the 160th right now because of your influence. There's things that they do in the unit right now because of my influence or some of the guys like you've talked about before.
Right.
Norm Hooten, a great example there. My first team leader, John Hale, unbelievable men. And I promise you that those stories transcend time, not just the Bible stories, but stories from the great men that we walked in their shadows. And that's, and that's part of the struggle for me when you write something like Leadership in the Shadows or The Next Mission is, who am I? Why should I be able to do this? Well, like I said, I want to reach the unreachable. That might be that guy in 10th group or first group that's out there somewhere and he's struggling with something. Maybe he'll read that and say, wait a minute, this guy is just as jacked up as I am. He's made the same mistakes as I've made, and he was able to be saved. Well, then how can I,
right?
How can I pull it together and do that as well? So
no, that's an awesome way to look at it. One of the biggest things, and again, Norm and I were just talking about, is the whole buddy check thing right now.
Yeah.
And we have, between law enforcement, first responders, and military, the suicides daily, the numbers sickening.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And it's the demons that get in the head. And if you can reach somebody and make them realize, everybody goes through these phases. I'm going through a brutal one myself right now with divorce, injury, stuff like that. But every day you got to wake up and have a reason to press forward, right? And I think a book like this might be what saves some people. And that's awesome. And you say, why me? Very few people have the gift to take what we have done for a career and then take that and translate it into something legible, readable, and enjoyable that actually has a message. I'll be honest with you, I don't read fiction. I love history. I love leadership. I love human performance. But I have read some fiction that has a message in it. And that's what I like. And what you're telling me is you're basically combining both. You're taking actual history and colorizing it, which is, I think, pretty cool. I'm excited to see it.
I used to read a lot of Louis L'Amour books when I was a kid. And I read those because my dad would buy Louis L'Amour books because they were cheap. You're familiar with Louis L'Amour.
Absolutely, all the Westerns.
And they're all fiction, but I'd kind of put myself in that, because I grew up in South Dakota riding horses and rodeoing and shooting guns and chasing cattle and, just all that stuff, eating beans out of a can. Just the stuff that I thought was really cool. And then I met a guy named Earl Fillmore when I first came to the unit. And Earl was one of the smartest dudes I ever met. He was killed in Somalia.
Yep.
He started questioning me one day. He's like, hey, what about, something? It was something from the Civil War. And I was like, man, I don't know. And he goes, man, you are stupid. And that's just how he talked. He didn't mean anything bad, but he did mean it.
You have to understand the culture.
He meant I was stupid. Like I didn't know history. And if I don't think we repeat history, but I think it rhymes.
It sure does.
Really well. So he came in the next day and he brought a book. And it was a Nathan Bedford Forrest book, First with the Most.
Yep.
And I read about Nathan Bedford Forrest, who, for folks that don't know, he was, I think, other than Genghis Khan, he's probably the greatest cavalry commander ever on planet Earth. He was a Confederate general and did some amazing stuff in the War of Northern Aggression.
Right.
And I read that book and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then Earl sat me down and questioned me about that. And I'm like, man, this is amazing. So then I got in my mind that I was only going to read history, which is fine. History it's great to read. I will say this though, you're missing some really well-written books if you don't read some fiction. So I'll give you an example there. Washington Irving, he wrote a book. He wrote a bunch of books. And obviously Washington Irving, he was named after George Washington. He met George Washington when he was like a little baby. George Washington placed his hand on his head and said a prayer over him. And anyway, he ended up writing a history about George Washington as well, which I have not read, but he wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is just an amazing, don't go to the movie. Listen to the book on tape or read the book. I would actually listen to that one because it's, if you get the right reader, it's just amazing. And then he wrote another book. Oh Oh, I got to think of the guy's name. It's a book about a guy that was dealing with like dancing with the devil. And it's an I can't think of the name right off the top of my head, but it's a very good book as well. I also listen to that one just because I like if I get a reader that can really tell the story well and has kind of that scruffy voice, and it's just there's so many great words that this guy uses, and that's just one of many. And then you can go on to books like Jack Carr's book or Jason Casper's books or Harrison Cohn's books. I mean, there's these books out there that are just spectacular thriller books that for me it's kind of there's no downstream effects of me reading that book. Whereas if I read a book about World War II, man, I'm taking notes in the margins and I'm doing all this stuff because I want to remember, what happened when we went into Italy, like in World War II. That's kind of a forgotten part of World War II.
Right.
Man, we learned our lessons in North Africa. We started to apply them a little bit better into Italy. That made us successful in Normandy.
Correct.
Well, that's the history. That's like Atkinson's books. There's 3 books which are very tough to read, but they're very, very good books. So anyway, read whatever you can read, and pick up the Bible. It's the best-selling book of all time.
It is, and it's the most long-standing, right?
Yeah.
No, one of the things I really enjoy doing, and you mentioned Normandy. We went over, it was the 80th, I believe, last June. And I just reread all my history before I got there. And what I enjoy doing is doing a terrain walk of all the battlefields and basically envisioning it. And for anybody that's ever sat or stood at Omaha, Utah, looked at the hedgerows that are still there,
St. Mary
and look at that dominant terrain that those guys came ashore at. I mean, if you have any understanding of tactics, those were men. Those were men that were getting out of those LCMs and assaulting that beach with everything. I mean, it is basically guys going to the slaughter, and they just kept coming and coming. And
I took it a step further for the 80th. I jumped out of a C-47.
So did I.
In Mount Michel.
So did we.
Mount St. Michel.
We did Mount St. Michel. We did Easy Company's DZ. So we ended up doing, we only did one static. We did a bunch of free fall over there. And Mount St. Michel I was actually injured. And I'd hurt my elbow on a jump because I set the drop zone up 180 degrees out the day before. And we came in, we were jumping free fall rigs, and we came smoking in, but I was not missing the Mount St. Michel jump. That is something else there.
What was cool for me was I've got 2 grandkids, and my daughter, her husband, my grandkids, my son, a few of my buddies were there, one of which is a German dude. And when I landed that day, he came up and he said, "Don't open this box in front of these French people." And I was like, "What?" And I looked, I'm like, "Whoa." And there was a set of German jump wings and a German paratrooper helmet, a miniature of that.
Awesome.
My buddy Oliver gave that to me on the drop zone. So having my grandkids there,
observe that.
Oh my goodness, it was so powerful. My granddaughter, she's not as interested in it as my grandson, but my grandson, anything military, I mean, when tanks drive by, he can tell you what tank that is.
Awesome.
And guns, he's just all into that.
You know what amazed me was the children over there in the local villas. I did not know until this trip, and this is my 3rd time being in Normandy, that they're assigned an American grave, and they have to know the whole history of that soldier. And I was talking to 2 or 3 that I personally walked out of there, and I looked at, we had 8 guys on our team that were jumping, and I was like, do you realize every one of these young French children knows more American history than our kids back at home?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they have a reason to know it. That's why they're still there. But to me, it was a shame that what's being taught in French schools in the Normandy area is not even being taught in American schools.
When I jumped with, there's 12 of us from the unit that jumped together, and that was not planned, but we ended up in Florida to do our train up jumps to get current again, and gravity still works.
Oh yeah.
And we all jumped together. 3 of those guys were my OTC instructors.
That's awesome. I love it.
It was really cool. Desert One guys. I mean, it was really, really cool. But
yeah, I went with an 8-man team. We were actually a demo jump team. It was called the Neptune Raiders. It was 7 retired frogmen from Dam Neck and myself. It was pretty interesting. We went and did our train up out in Arizona, and I realized, we were doing free fall demos, but we had to do the authentic C-47 static line jump. And I realized on the static line jump in Arizona that I did not miss static line at all. But the privilege of being able to jump out of, a matter of fact, we jumped out of one aircraft. The call sign was, "That's all, folks." It was,
Yeah.
yeah, lead aircraft going
Yeah.
into Normandy. And apparently the story on that is they found it like 6, 7 years ago in a boneyard, and a couple private industry people put money into it. And man, what a treat to be jumping
Oh,
into
yeah.
Normandy out
Yeah.
of an airplane that dropped our boys back in 44, right? So
I started out in the 82nd.
yeah.
So
So,
there's obviously,
a lot of history
yeah,
there.
in the 82nd, you got a lot of history. They called us the No War 04 because 504 didn't jump into Normandy,
Right.
but they were held in reserve. And then there was another little mission that happened after that. It was called Market Guard. And
Oh yeah. Slightly bigger jump.
yeah, slightly rougher on
Yeah.
the American, well, on the coalition forces there as well. So yeah, man, it's just, I get goosebumps when I think about it. It was
Me
just,
too. I
was
went
really
straight
cool.
to, I started out in 1st Ranger Battalion, and, I went straight to Point de Hoc. And
Yeah.
and one of the things I found out is there's no living survivors from Point de Hoc anymore. They're all gone. And that's a shame. I had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of veterans. That was our main thing there, was to be ambassadors for the veterans. And that was the thing that was the biggest honor to me.
Yeah.
But I was talking to one gentleman that was 104 years old, and he was as sharp as they get. I mean, I was just absolutely blown away by how sharp this individual was. Another guy that was 99, and they were just so happy to see us and so happy to be back there. And some of the, I think it was the Best Defense Foundation and Delta Airlines brought most of them over there. But we went to every event we could just to support them. But I got everywhere, especially on the actual. So on the actual D-Day event, we jumped with the Knights, the Leapfrogs, and some other people right off Omaha Beach, and then went to the big ceremony. And just to sit there and watch them all get either wheeled or walked in and sit there, I was like, you had to take that in, because
Yeah.
that is America's greatest generation. I mean, compared to the pumps that you and I have done, they left and came back 3.5 years later. It was pretty intense. So
Yeah, and really soldiers around the world. If you think about World War II, think about our enemies, the Germans, what they went through. I mean, whew, talk about, they're on the losing side, and you look at what they went through during that war. Russians, obviously, they suffer no matter.
yeah,
It's almost like they have to suffer to be a Russian soldier.
that's right.
But the Germans, they're I don't want to say they're like us, but they're soldiers, and they were in the military, and they had to do what they were told. And yeah, it's really powerful when you get to go and meet some of those guys, which I was lucky enough to meet some, prior. I'd been to Normandy before. I went there with the unit. We were coming back from a JRX. We stopped there and did a tour, and the French are the French, so sometimes they're hard to deal with, but
I think if you're in Normandy, they're awesome.
oh, and I agree with that.
As soon as you get out of Normandy and you're like Paris or something, forget it.
Well, this guy, I said, I was kind of being a smart aleck, and I said, "Where were you?" And I really regretted saying that after I said it, because he said, I think he was 3 years old or something like that. And he goes, "We were in a cow pasture, and my sister was born 3 days before the Normandy invasion, and she was born on a door. They set up a door, and his mom gave birth to his sister in a cow patch." Think about that.
Yeah.
We can't even fathom that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, when you're traveling, it's always good. And not just the people that are older than us, but you talk to some of these young soldiers that, like, I never served in Afghanistan. And I talked to guys that were in Afghanistan, and man, there's so many people that did so much more than I could ever imagine. And they weren't in a special ops unit. They were straight leg infantry guys and doing what they had to do. And man, it's
we just did a podcast, and Scott Miller, who we both love, made a comment, and we all quickly agreed. The one thing I'll say is the special operations forces are very largely celebrated, very acknowledged. Some of it's self-proclaimed, some of it's because of the mission profiles. They're just so high but the conventional military soldier is not acknowledged like that. And people don't know how much work they actually do and the grind. And the deployments with them are a year, 15,
Oh
18
yeah, yeah.
months. It's not, I understand our op tempo going over there 90, 120 days. You got to bring the guys out of the fight because it's 90 of 120 days of intensity. You got to have a rotation, blah, blah, blah. But those folks live it, breathe it, and not taken care of, don't have the gear we have, things like that. So no, I've always said to the military service members, and I've run into service members before. I was in Mexico, and this guy's like, I was in the Air Force, but I really didn't do anything like you did. I'm like, time out. You're a veteran. You served.
Yeah.
I don't care if you were flipping eggs in a mess hall. You're a veteran. You served. That makes you a very elite person in my mind. And I just wish that the regular service members were given the recognition that they're so deserved.
Well, just think how far would we make it without chow and vehicles?
Yeah.
You look at your crew chiefs.
Yeah.
Your crew chiefs are in the military, your
They
crew
keep you
chiefs are
flying.
some of the hardest working folks on the planet.
Absolutely. And it's a blind trust. You walk out to that aircraft on a time sensitive target. I'm talking about from the time, in Iraq, in a jock, that I'm given a mission and I am spinning it up in 30 minutes to go do something very hostile. And I don't even blink because the team, from the sheet metal guy to the armament guy to the flight engineers, crew chiefs, they got it right.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those where it's, there's a saying out there in Denmark when you walk out the back door, and it says the deed is not all the glory. And the reason that's put up there is what people don't realize is, and just I'll pick a random example. These are not actual numbers, but to support a unit of about 200 operators takes about 3,000 people. Because that is the machine to keep that entity moving.
Yeah.
And everybody's a part of it. I'm telling you that if you don't have the gun the right way, if I'm not getting paid, it's all part of it, right? So we're on the same page on that. And when you really look historically, you look at the fight in Afghanistan, Iraq, look at World War II, look at Korea, the conventional soldiers, man, they got it done. Dutch Moyer said recently, we were talking about where technology's going, and he's like, I don't care what kind of drones and technology, you're still going to have the infantrymen to hold ground.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, you have to hold ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's very valid.
Yep.
So, change the subject. This is something I really want to talk about with you because you were one of the ones that started what now is so widespread. But what got you in the mindset and the frame of mind that as you left the unit, very successful career, to start Viking Tactics and to get into that mode? And I know as we talked about you writing the books, your wife was instrumental in helping you with the book. She was also very instrumental in this, wasn't she?
Yeah, she and I started the business together, and she's still the CEO. I mean, I'm the president. I own very little of the company, and that's, we did that when we actually started Viking Tactics when I was still in the military. We were selling some slings. The sling, evolved from, we called it the hamster strap there. It wasn't a good sling at the time. It did what it needed to do, but I made 10 of those, and then guys started wanting them, and I'm like, I can't sell this because this thing is not. It's not ready for prime time. So then eventually we had that, we got it to where it is. And it's very similar now to what it was back then. We've made a few changes, but yeah, we started that business together. And what's good about working with my wife is, one, she's the hardest working person I've ever met, hands down. There's nobody, I've never met anybody that works as hard as she does. But probably the more important thing is she's got my back.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So that sometimes is hard for guys like us to swallow, because she's going to come and tell me that the emperor has no clothes. And
I love it.
You fall in love with your own ideas. We just do. That's just the way it is. But if you have somebody with you that truly cares about your business and about you as an individual, because the business doesn't, I mean, honestly, the business doesn't matter, because if Viking Tactic goes away tomorrow, I still have my wife. So that's more important than the business. And I think we got to stay, you know, we got to stay tight on that too. But man, we've had some knockdown dragouts about products I wanted to do, or vision and direction I wanted to go, or books. Like when I wrote that book, I had a buddy of mine, Matt Busella, that helped me. I said, he wanted to help, and he's the one that forced me to write this book. And I was already doing the Leadership in the Shadows seminars for federal law enforcement. I would give the stuff to him, and he would give me honest feedback. I said, okay, Melinda, we're ready. I gave her the book. She's like, all right. So she had a big binder, and she went through and she handed it back to me. And I got to a chapter, and the whole chapter was red X, like the entire pages were X'd out. And I go, what is this? And she goes, rewrite those chapters, and don't look at that chapter before you rewrote it, or before you rewrite it, because I know that you were mad or in a bad mood when you wrote that chapter.
Just by the tone.
Rewrite it. And I was like, I was mad because first of all, it's a lot of work. Second of all, like, that's your baby,
Right.
you know? And I rewrote those chapters, and those chapters are way better now than they were. So we got the business going. And I think it's kind of funny. My wife would say, what are you going to do when you retire? And I said, I'm going to teach people to shoot. And she goes, no, seriously, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to teach people to shoot. And then we started getting closer to retirement. And Chris Ferris, you know, Chris he was the guy that I'd written in my notebook, reasons to stay and reasons to go. And I had more reasons to stay than reasons to go. And then all of a sudden, some of the reasons to stay started going to the other side of the page. And I'm not going to get in the minutia, but the bottom line is, it was time for me to get out of the military. And I booked 42 weeks that first year on the range. Before I got out of the military, I had 42 weeks booked. That sounds glamorous.
That is a lot of work for people that don't know it.
42 weeks
Yes.
on the range, coming home with broken guns, put one in the gun safe, grab another one, get back on the road. I had tendonitis so bad I couldn't pick up a coffee cup. I mean, and now I know how to fix that stuff as I'm going. But at that time, 95% of our business was shooting instruction, and 5% was sales of product, because we didn't really have very many. Well, we had one product at the time. Now it's completely the opposite. You know, 90% of the business is product, with the slings are still our flagship product and still what we sell a ton of. We've got belts, light mounts, the books, you know, there's a bunch of stuff, the knives and things like that I've designed. And we've had some really good partners as we've done this. We've also been really blessed to meet some folks that have very good business schooling,
Right.
because they've taught me exactly what not to do. Because I feel like if you have a master's in business and you've never ran a business, you ain't got a clue.
That's right.
You know, I mean, it's good. They've taught you some stuff, but they've taught you some wrong stuff too. Like how much money you put into your marketing. Well, if you're putting so much money in your marketing that you can't make it back on product sales, then that's a waste of money. Now, if somebody else is funding your thing and you don't care, well, good for you. But I care because it's my livelihood. It's my wife and I. That's all we got. You know, we got Viking Tactics. She was a school teacher. And a year before I got out, she quit teaching school and started doing VTAC, a wing and a prayer. And so when she makes decisions, it's not based on business. It's based on, are we going to be able to do this? We've never taken a loan for our business. We've never taken a loan to buy product or anything like that. We save our money till we got enough to buy more inventory. And that's just how we've done our business. And that's because of her. That's not because of me. I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. I didn't want to sit on a tractor the rest of my life. She grew up on a farm as well. And I remember my dad telling me, my dad was born in 1911. And he said, why are you joining the Army? They're just going to teach you how to kill people. And I'm like, no, Dad, I'm going to be a 31 Victor tactical communications. And I'm like, yeah, you know, and then what I learned was how to kill people. That's really what I learned. But
the dad was visionary.
Yeah, my dad was a super good guy, hardworking dude. My mom as well. And
1911 is a good year too.
Yeah, 1911 is a good year. My mom was born in 25. They both have passed away. But yeah, it's I couldn't have done it without my wife. And then we've had some people that have helped us along the way. And, some of those folks are just people that have bought our product. I mean, like you, the 160th, the unit, the Rangers, other outfits that have bought our product, that obviously we're very thankful for that. But I hope they bought our product because it was a good product, and not just because it was
no,
me,
I tell you right now, I think anybody that's listening to this that's run your sling, first of all, knows it's the industry standard. And I'm dead serious when I say everybody's copied it, because there are so many slings out there nowadays, and every one of them I look at, I'm like, this is just another modification of the VTAC. And that's what we run. We love your slings. They were the first ones to ever come out and do that, and they are the standard. But yeah, right now, I mean, if you did if you probably put your sling in Google, I would come back to say there's probably be 20 companies running something very parallel.
Yeah, and that used to bother me. When people copy your stuff, it'll piss you off. But now I'm like, well, that's awesome. They can't come up with their own ideas. They got to copy my ideas. That's awesome. Like our battle belt, that's been copied by several companies as well. Our light mounts, there's a lot of products that are copied. And here's the thing, we're still successful. We're still making enough money to buy chickens and get eggs from them,
Right.
So I'm just thankful for what we've been given there. And then on the instruction side, it was hard when I first got out, because I was going into, well, I'll give you an example, like law enforcement. Law enforcement and the military, they're two different games.
Largely.
But I will say this, if it works for the unit, it'll probably work for a SWAT guy. Well, they didn't quite see it that way. And initially, I didn't answer their questions before they asked them. And they'd ask me these, catch-22 questions. And, I would just have to think about it for a little bit. Well, now I just answer the questions before they ever ask them, because the way that we teach, room-to-room movement, the way that we teach our shooting, there's a reason for that. And like I've had guys say, well, I never teach guys to shoot from the support side. And there's this saying that goes on the internet that, tell me you've never been in a gunfight without telling me you've never been in a gunfight.
Right.
There's times where I was pulling security at a corner of a building. Man, I wish I would have known how to shoot from my support side. And now I do. And now everybody that goes through my class, they know how to do that. They know how to get their pistol out of the holster with one hand, left hand or right hand. Maybe they've had to change their gear because they couldn't do that. But I'm teaching that because I can cite guys that have been in harm's way, that have had to do that. Well, there you go. That's enough for me right there.
That's enough right there.
And then you're going to get the confidence where I shoot left hand, right? I don't even think about it now. And at the end of a 3-day course, our students are the same way. And they're like, why did I ever worry about this? And I'm like, well, you never worried about, or you worried about it because you had been told that it's dumb. Well, it ain't dumb when you're in a gunfight and all you've got
is that
hand, you know? So
no, you're exactly right. We just did a course with Dan Horner, and everybody was running Red Dot. He's amazing. I watched him take at least 5 or 6 people and get them in their offhand, in their off eye, with both eyes open, shooting a red dot versus trying to cross over the dominant eye. And everybody after 2 mags is like, this is pretty easy, but had never been pushed to do it.
Yeah.
And then we all know the reason why. For that exact situation. When shit goes bad, if you've at least done it a few times, that familiarity, that draw, that sight picture and everything, you've had it before. So you just,
the VTAC barricade's another example. You see VTAC barricades all over the planet now. I mean, even our enemies are using them. So a guy named Benny Cooley, professional shooter, a good buddy of mine, he had a barricade similar to that. And I was like, Benny, that's an awesome idea, but it's not difficult enough because these slots are too wide and this and that. So I made a couple VTAC barricades, and I was running OTC at the time, the shooting program. And next thing you know, I mean, I was up at SIG Academy, and they got like 100 of them.
Yeah.
And they can put them on any range.
Tactical Games uses them.
Yep.
I mean, and it's actually kind of funny. This is a sidebar story, but last year Tactical Games was running VTACs, and then they decided to change something and make a different barricade. And we had guys that had been shooting on the VTAC forever, and their can wouldn't fit through one of the slits. And they were having a really bad sight picture, and it really changed their day for them because they were such a creature of habit. But no, you're right. The VTAC barricade is another industry standard that's out there and has been copied a million times. So
some of the, when I first started, we do a lot of stuff around vehicles, and I've had, there's guys out there that believe you should stand, 10 yards back from the vehicle and do all this stuff. And we got an instructor that works with me named Chili Palmer. And what people say is, well, a vehicle won't stop bullets. And Chili's saying is, well, it's thicker than air.
That's right.
And that's why when we teach fighting in and around vehicles, we stay tight to the vehicle, because if you've been shot at, where do you go? You go to the nearest cover. If you don't go to cover, you either deaf, dumb, or blind.
Or you froze.
Yeah, or you froze, you're going to go to cover. So why don't we just teach to fight from a position that is protected like that? So you can't win everybody to your side. And, that's one thing that I've come up with is this. I don't, like social media, we have social media and we put stuff out there, but I hate to break it to people, but I don't read any of the comments. Because if you go and read the comments, it'll only piss you off, because you got some dude that's sitting in his mom's basement in a beanbag chair eating Cheetos. Yeah. And it's like, I don't care about that guy. The guy that's on the range with me is the guy I care about. And we're going to teach them the best way to fight in and around a vehicle, or fight with their carbine or their pistol or whatever it might be. And then the other thing I try to do is I try not to get into things that I'm not the best at. So you will not see me teaching knife fighting.
Got it.
It ain't happening. Do I carry a knife? Heck yeah. I think everybody should carry a knife or three.
Right.
But I'm not the knife fighter. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guy. I was one of the guys that first trained with Horton and Hoist when they came to the unit.
Yeah.
So I've trained jiu-jitsu and I've done knife fighting with my buddy Alan Eliashwitz and learned a lot. And the biggest things I learned is, one, I don't want to go to the ground. And two, I definitely don't want to get in a knife fight. So those are areas I'm not going to teach. That doesn't mean I don't talk about weapons retention with the pistol or the carbine. But I try to stay in my lane. And I think that's where a lot of the guys that are out now, they could learn from that. Don't try to teach everything. Teach what you're good at.
Teach what you're really good at.
Yeah,
and stay on that.
Yeah, and we get a lot of questions from guys. How do I do this? And I'm like, well, it's pretty simple. Join the military. Stay in the military for 20 years. The last 10 years of your military career, go to every single shooting match that you can. Start doing classes where you charge 10 guys a total of $50 so you can make $50 in a day, and teach them shooting and learn how to be an instructor. And then when you get out, maybe some people want to take a class from you. And they're like, I got to do all that. And I'm like, well, you don't have to. You can go work at Lowe's or what, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with working at Lowe's.
Where's your credibility?
Yeah, but you have to be able to do that. And then the other thing is, my wife says I shouldn't tell people this, but I would do this for free. I love to shoot. So when I'm not shooting the weapons that I shoot now, one of the things I do for fun is I shoot in NRL hunter competitions. Okay. I've shot a little bit of PRS, but I really like the NRL stuff, shooting out to distance, finding your targets and just dealing with that problem. I'm not real good at it.
So it's a challenge.
It's a challenge, and I'm learning, and I've got guys that are helping me, and I'm looking at dudes. I'm videotaping better shooters. And I'm like, what am I doing? My wife's videotaping me, and she's like, you look like a clown out there. You got this stuff everywhere. And I'm like, Roger that. And I keep trying to get better and better. Then I start shooting NRL 22 just because it's very difficult. And like I said, if I have a day off, I don't go golf.
Right.
I've never played a round of golf in my life. I've shot a lot of golf balls with a rifle,
right,
but I've never played a round of golf. Nothing against those guys if they want to do that. But on my days off, I go to the range.
I love it.
With a 22, take my grandson and do that, or just, whatever I can to go shoot or hunt. I spend a lot of time hunting as well.
There's no question. It's two different games. The, shooting a pistol like a you or a Dan Horner is definitely a gift. The long range shooting, which I truly enjoy. Now you start invoking science. Now you better understand ballistics. Now you had bullet travel, speed, weight, pressure altitude, density altitude. I love to take some of that pilot shit and get it in there too. I think if the guys like Brian Morgan out at Hat Creek and those kind of folks, I mean,
I got a Brian Morgan story for you.
Go ahead, man.
So I get a call from Brian Morgan. So I think it's Brian Morgan from the unit.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, butt monkey, what's up? And he's like, what? But we have this great conversation. Then I get off the phone and I'm like, I don't think that was the Brian Morgan that I think it is. So he comes up to me at this shoot match we shot to the Nationals a couple years ago, the NRL Hunter match. And he goes, I'd like to thank you. And I go, for what? And he goes, everybody calls me butt monkey now. And I'm like, well, sorry about that, dude. But hey, man, you got to stick with what you know. So at that match, and I was using a tripod with a tack table on it and then a bag on top of that. And I'm watching him and his partner and Benny Cooley, and they're running Really Right Stuff tripods, and they're just crushing it. And I get done with the match, and I was like, man, that bipod, and he's like, this is a brand new bipod right here. I was like, okay, will you sell it to me? Yeah, roger that. So at the end of the match, we go to the awards thing. We're in there, and he says, let's go get that tripod. We walk out to his vehicle. This is how bad I did, obviously, because he goes, here you go. And he goes, yeah, my wife will invoice you. 2 weeks later, no invoice. So I called him up and I said, hey, man, I owe you some money. He goes, no, you don't. Consider that a gift. I'm not a good gift receiver. And he said, let me do this. I like to do this. And I was like, I told him that. I said, I'm not a good gift receiver, but thank you. And because of him, I now run a Really Right Stuff. They're expensive. It's a very expensive tripod. But I'm telling you, it changed my game.
Yes.
Not only for shooting matches, but for hunting. And I'm telling you that if you get around some of these guys, he's a perfect example of a dude that's just so good. You see guys like Matt Allwine, John Pinch, they're the best. Like when they go to a match, like they're the best. This last year at the Nationals, Matt Allwine zeroed a stage on day one out in Arizona. It's 109 degrees. He zeroes this stage. He's like, oh man. So he's not going to win. He's been like the 5-time national champion.
Right.
He went into the next day and he told himself, I can win this, but I cannot drop 1 point. And he did not drop 1 point, and he won that match, and he's still the reigning national champion.
That is awesome.
So that tells you how good he is, that he can make that happen. So guys like that, I call him up with the stupidest questions. And I think that's where a guy like me, a guy like them, when I get a question on email from a shooter, it ain't stupid to them.
No.
It might be stupid to me, but it's like I have a chance to do two things. I can influence that guy and teach him something. And two, I can make him a friend and maybe even a customer for life.
Right.
Now, when I answer those emails, I'm not trying to sell them something. I'm trying to answer their question. But I feel like some folks that I've met that are professional shooters, they're dicks. And they don't have a following. And then when they win, people are like, oh man, I wish that guy wouldn't have won. But when you have a guy like Francis Cologne, I don't know if you know Francis, Chad Heckler, when guys like that win, Morgan King, he won the gold bullet this year in PRS. When a guy like that wins, you know what guys say?
Hell yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yep.
That guy is awesome. And he won. And I am happy that he won because I've seen Francis Cologne stop what he's doing, getting prepped for a stage and help a new shooter.
Yep.
And I want to be that guy because at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter more than winning that match.
No, and I love the ethos there. I sponsor quite a few tactical athletes. The tactical games and the Patriot games are two of the biggest things that Born Primitive Tactical's into right now because I love it's fitness and shooting, and it's elite fitness and shooting. And it's probably the shooting aspect of it because of the fitness that's induced. It's probably the closest thing to stress shooting that anybody will ever see outside of the units, if you know what I'm saying. I've got one individual.
It's like a Sergeant Major day.
It is. And I've got one individual, Kurt. This guy, he's a Green Beret that's a sniper instructor as well, but he is a extremely competent long range shooter. But he got disqualified at this year's National Tactical Games over something, and it crushed his soul. And he was, up until that point, the front runner. But he continued to cheer everybody on, continued to support the winners, and was the first one to congratulate the guy that won it, that he was ahead of. That's his ethos.
And people remember that.
People, and I walked up to him and I'm like, hey, I think it was a week or 2 weeks, we have the Patriot Games National Championship. You can't compete in the championship because you didn't compete in a regional, but you can compete in the open. So I just wanted to get his head back in the game. He got DQ'd. So he comes down there. It's in Georgia. It's a 2-day event. He has a bad first day. His head's not there. And I was kind of surprised because I expected him to come in and just crush this because it's a different level of competition.
Yeah.
He was down 100 points. And I mean, there's no way. Well, exact same story. He came in the next day, the look on his face told every single one of us everything we needed to know. Not only did he not drop everything, he just destroyed that course and he turned around and he won. And, I didn't even know what to say to him. I was so freaking proud of him, but that's the reason I brought him there. And, I just looked at him. I said, you ready for next year? He's like, I am now. And he said one word to me, thank you. Because he knew why I brought him there. It was to reset his head.
Yeah.
Right. But everybody celebrates a guy like that winning because even if he's not winning, he's there for the group. And I love that. And he actually has spent a lot of time with Brian Morgan. There's, I don't know. Do you know Sean Murphy?
I do.
With Sons of Liberty.
Yep.
Another extremely gifted long-range shooter, used to be with Night Force. But Sean and Kurt, we've paired them up together and we're doing a lot of stuff exclusive with Sons of Liberty right now. And it's kind of a fun ride to see the team they've put together there. But I'll tell you the long distance thing, which is where we started on this, it's a different game. We had, again, Dan Horner, this was 2-3 weeks ago. Probably something else that I saw that was really cool is we built a rifle, 14.5-inch AR, Sons of Liberty with a Night Force on it, with a side red dot, an acro for main point that we built it for a female firefighter that has shot quite a bit. And she has competed in the past, but she had never competed on this system and at this level. And I've been working with her on getting her up to speed on this rifle. And we got the rifle dialed in. And then I gave her to Dan. Dan spent 2 hours with her. This is someone that's really never shot distance. I put her on a KD range and I sat there on a spotting scope and called targets from 200 to 600 yards on an AR. 2 magazines, 60 rounds. She didn't miss a round. I was like, we are check complete.
Yeah.
But I was amazed at what Dan could do with this person because we built the right system. And I looked her in the face. I'm like, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. At this point in time, it's you, not the gun, if you have an issue. And Dan did that magic with her. And it turned out to be gold. And now she's going to compete this year. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point there that some guys say that, well, you just shoot whatever you got. Okay, to a certain extent. If you're going to shoot these little tiny targets that we shoot in NRL Hunter, you have to have a rifle that shoots and you have to know how to run that rifle. And I will tell you that in that game, equipment does matter. You can't just bring your granddad's, Model 70 out because it ain't going to work for you. So that's one thing I've had to, with a pistol, I can pretty much shoot any pistol, whatever, it doesn't matter because the targets are so forgiving because you're so close. But when you get in a carbine, same thing, 100 yards and closer, doesn't really matter. But now we start stretching it out and all that stuff starts to really take effect there. And then there's guys that I have some buddies that I shot with forever. Guy named Lynn Ashley, he retired as a colonel from Special Forces. He works for Surefire now. And he and I talk a lot about guns and equipment and this and that. And we're always picking each other's brains. Like, how, what's the next, like what can you do to take it to the next level? I was on the range the other day with a guy, Aaron Martin, and he wanted to shoot on the range that I'm a member of. I've got a shooting range at my house, but I can only shoot out to 250 yards. So I go to this range, K&M. It's like a golf course for heterosexual males. And he hadn't shot at that range. He said, yeah, can I show up there and shoot with you sometime? So we get there. And I said, watch me shoot some of these stages. I'm shooting the stage. He goes, well, here's what you need to do. And he's telling me, I go, I can't do that. And he goes, your neck, you got a bad neck. And I go, no, I can't see my sights if I start pulling my buttstock in tighter. because I'm an AR shooter. So I normally shoot with my butt stuck out. I blade my body a little bit, drive the gun. That doesn't work in long range shooting. So I'm trying to do this and I can't get on. He goes, let me show you. And he takes my gun and he gets behind it. He goes, oh, your sights are too low. Boom. That quick. I'm like, my sights are too low. He goes, let me grab my gun. So I grab his gun and boom, immediately with his gun, I can do exactly what I've been seeing everybody tell me to do, but I can't do it because my equipment wouldn't allow me to do that. So I called Leupold up, and it was funny because I needed rings a certain height. My buddy Pete at Leupold, he's like, bro, we are so backlogged on those that I went and walked around the factory and I found a set laying on somebody's desk and I stole them and sent them to you. And I put them on my gun and it was night and day difference. So if you can shoot with people that are better than you, and Aaron's definitely better than me, or try other people's equipment, you know, that little thing, raising my sights, I went from 2.15 to like 2.6. Now I'm at 2.5. That little thing makes such a difference in that game that I didn't understand. And now all of a sudden, when I fire, my gun is staying on target too. So I'm shooting open light this year. So I built our guns have to be light in that sport. They have to be 12 pounds or under for open light. And it's a 6.5 Creedmoor because you can't shoot anything smaller than that. You can shoot a 25 Creedmoor, but I'm shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor with 153.5 grain bullets. And it's got a lot of recoil, but I've been able to, it just changed everything just by that little. So even at my age, I'm 57 and I'm learning. Every time I go to the range, I shot on the range day before yesterday, and then I'll shoot a couple times next week before I head to my first match for the year, which will be out in New Mexico before SHOT Show. And I'm like a little kid, you know? And I think that's, once again, going back to the Viking Tactics things, that's what I believe makes us successful is I love what I'm doing. Like
Right.
when I'm on the range, I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this.
Right.
And I love it. Oh, it's raining. I don't care.
Right.
It's cold. I don't care. I'd rather have it cold than hot anyway, but I'm able to do what I love to do. And it's teaching. That has the teaching aspect to me is the most important thing. If I learned from a guy, Alan Eliashwitz, how to grind knives. Well, now, you know, guys come to my place in my shop and I teach them how to grind a knife. Man, I love that. I love that I can not only do it, but I can actually teach somebody because Alan taught me well enough that I understand what he's saying. I understand how to set up my grinder and how to do it, you know, and he's another guy. If you're not familiar with him, he's kind of the father of the tactical folding knife. And he's not kind of, he is. And all his knives are handmade. There's no CNC involved. Everything is done by hand.
That's incredible in today's day and age.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. And he's a former jarhead, so that makes him even better.
Right.
And he's a great instructor. He teaches knife fighting. He teaches some stick stuff. He's a great shooter. I mean, so that's one of the reasons we really get along. He's not only taught me how to grind knives, but he's also, you know, he's an open book. I can call him about anything. And I don't have to go through the learning process. I can go immediately, or I should say the self-learning process. I can go from I don't understand to 10 minutes later, he says, here's a video I just did for you so you understand this. And he draws it on his whiteboard while he's got his phone sitting there. And I'm like, Roger that, you know, and then I can get in the shop and do it. You know, he's not afraid to share with me.
You said something that I want to hit on. I love doing something. So you have to understand the communities we come out of, everybody has egos. Everybody wants to be kind of a top dog, this, that, and the other. I am like you. I like to be doing something with somebody that's better than me. I don't care if it's skydiving. I don't care if it's shooting. I don't care if it's fishing. I want to be with somebody that knows more than I do and get their knowledge. That's why we put this shooting invitational together. And I mean, the people that I brought in there, a lot of former unit members, a lot of soft people, a lot of competitive shooters, some federal agents, stuff like that. Everybody, when they heard it was Dan Horner teaching, checked their ego at the door, turned the receptor on to learn, and not a single person, we did 1 day pistol, 1 day carbine. Not a single person walked out of there not going, holy shit, did I get a bunch out of this? Yeah. And it was kind of cool because for me, man, I was frustrated on the pistol. I was not having a good day on pistol, and it was just beat me up. And I was just so ready to get to the rifle day and redeem myself. But I just watched Dan's method of teaching, and I just took a wrap off and relaxed. I'm like, okay, I know I'm better than this. Let's just pay attention to what he's teaching. But no, there's something to be said there, right?
I was shooting with a guy you probably never heard of, but Rob Latham.
Yeah.
Probably the winningest,
never heard of him.
Yeah, winningest pistol shooter ever.
Right.
And I beat him on a stage. And it was a stage he'd never set up. And then he said, well, you get to name it because you beat me on that stage. And I was like, I ain't going to name it. So he named this drill the Tri-Lambda. Ha ha ha, you know, and I said,
got it.
I crushed you. And he goes, let's do it 99 more times.
Right.
And see who wins the largest majority. And that's the thing you got to remember. Like, you might beat me once or twice, but I'm going to learn from that. And I'm going to keep trying. And I, like you said, I want to shoot with people that are better than me. It just always, there's just little things like how to true your data. Like, talk to 5 people and figure out what truly works for you. I'm also a realist. Like, if somebody explains something to me, I was shooting out at K&M, and the guy that owns that, guy named Shannon Kay, he's like, yeah, what Kyle just said is wrong. And I'm like, he called me out.
Right.
And he goes, and I'm not trying to call him out. And I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
But then he explained it, and I'm like, he's 100% correct. 100% correct. And it totally, that little thing that he said completely changed my mindset when I'm shooting, because it's something that didn't matter. And I was telling these guys it mattered, and he's like, no, he's wrong. That does not matter. Don't even 0.1 mils. That's 0.35 minutes of angle.
Right.
You can't, that you can't hold that. So don't, why are you thinking about that? So, you can learn even with, he and I are good buddies that we give each other a hard time, but you can always learn, from whoever you're shooting with, and then get out there and try it. I take my stuff to the range and I shoot a lot. I practice a lot at the stuff that I suck at. A lot of guys go to the range and they just shoot the stuff they're good at. And I don't do that.
That doesn't make you better.
Yeah. I shoot the stuff that I suck at. And then when I get to a match and I got to do that, guys are like, oh man, I don't know. And I'm like, I hate this position, and I've practiced it for my last 5 training sessions. Let's do it.
Here we go.
Yep.
Here we go. Hey, this is Bruno, and you've been watching the Hot Wash by Born Primitive Tactical. Please don't forget to like and subscribe our podcast, and thanks for watching. Now back to the podcast. Something earlier in the conversation you mentioned about training law enforcement coming from the military, specifically the JSOC community. One of the things I think that's really helped bridge that gap lately, we actually work with a program. It's retired frogmen out of Dam Neck, that it's a non-prof. They actually do fundraisers. They raise money, and then they go in and they train people for active shooters for free. It's really a cool concept. We've had them in Texas, Florida, New England, all over the place. And we had to learn this culturally. A lot of the officers are, well, we're not allowed to do what you guys do. And we've always gone in there with the approach of, look, we're just going to give you one more thing in the toolbox so you have at your disposition when it's in a crisis. And it's kind of funny because in a 2 or 3 day training event, the first 2 hours, you get the skeptical looks and everything. By lunchtime on the end of the first day, they're fully bought in. They see the value of, and to be honest with you, most of it's movement.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, what are the 3 things you always see with law enforcement? Get quiet, move, and then entry procedures, right? Like all those 3 things that once you get them doing those basic and fundamentals, this guy Sully that runs this team that does it, he's extremely good guy. I saw something that was really cool, how he broke them of bad habits. He gave them a hostage rescue scenario and told them, be as fast as you possibly can. This was the second day, end of second day of training. Be as fast as you possibly can to prosecute this building. Don't sit there and lament on the tactics. Be fast. And you want to know what? It was the best run we ever saw, because they stopped thinking and they started doing what they knew to do. And they removed that thought process out of it and just flowed. Yeah. And it was crazy, because I watched him. I mean, I learned something from him right there by making them do some speed drills and stop thinking and be more mechanical in their SOPs and execution, they actually got better.
Yeah, and
So,
let me add something else to that. So one of the biggest shortcoming I see from the tactical wizards is that they don't know how to shoot. So kind of going along with what you say, if I take a guy that is very, very good on the range, so that means that they can draw their weapon quickly, they use their safety on their AR. When they come off the target, they automatically put their weapon on safe. They're very muzzle aware. They don't cover their buddies or themselves with their muzzle. I can take that individual and I can teach them tactics. I mean, super, super easy. The other side of that is the law enforcement guy or the military guy that's not a good shooter, that hasn't had the time on the range, that is not aware of their muzzle. They're not aware of safety. They don't have trigger discipline or trigger finger discipline. Man, that's a long road to hoe. So to all the guys out there and gals out there, if you want to get good and very good at tactics and move quickly, you've got to be good at the basics, which are how do you shoot your weapons and how do you do that safely on the range, turning, running around vehicles, whatever it might be. And then when I take that individual inside a shoot house, I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They got it all figured out. Otherwise, you're going to be air horning them or hollering, or your blood pressure is going to go up or whatever. You really, really have to have individuals that are switched on at the core fundamentals.
That's a great point. And I think even in the military, I can remember, going back even when I first started in 1st Ranger Battalion, you could tell the guys that their fathers or whoever in their family had brought them up shooting versus the guys that haven't, because that trigger finger muzzle awareness is something that comes over time. You get to a point where you don't think about it because it's so ingrained in you, and you're exactly right. And then when you see it where somebody doesn't have that, it all of a sudden now everybody's on edge, and it's like, okay, let's fix that first. So you never even get to the objective, right? No, that's a great point. Total shift in gears, because everybody listening to us probably thinks right now that all we're going to talk about is shooting. And I know, trust me, we could probably talk about this till dinner time.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something I know very little about, your foundation. So could you kind of tell everybody that's listening and watching all about your foundation and the cause? Because I know enough to speak on it, but I'd rather hear it from you.
So Stay in the Fight Foundation, and it's not Stay in the Fight Veterans Foundation, because we put this out and then somebody come up with a Stay in the Fight Veterans Foundation. That's not us. Ours is for any human being. You don't have to be a veteran or law enforcement. It's for people that have hit a shortcoming somewhere in their life. The way this came about was my wife had to have emergency back surgery the day that we went in. Now, when she went in there, she could barely walk. She had severe pain. She couldn't stand up straight. She was in a bad way. And my wife is super athletic, so that's not her. And she's tougher than reinforced woodpecker lips. So when she said she's hurting, I knew something was bad. Went in there that day for the surgery. They came in, they put the little funny hat on her, and they started prepping her for surgery. And then the nurse comes in and says, your insurance was not approved, so we're not going to do the surgery. And my wife looked at me and she said, go get the checkbook. It's in the center console of my truck. Roger that.
Yes, ma'am.
So I went and got the checkbook, and I wrote a check for $18,000 for the surgery. And I wrote the check for the anesthesiologist and some other stuff. And an hour after her surgery, she was pain-free and she was up walking. 2 months later, she tells me one morning, she goes, we're going to start a 501c3. And I'm like, we ain't doing it. Because I've been exposed to a lot of veterans 501c3s where the people that are running them are making a lot of money.
Right.
And the people that need the help are getting nothing. They'll take a guy that's lost a leg or 2 or 3 and they'll parade him across the stage. They'll take in a bunch of money, and that dude goes back to his crappy life dealing with his pain and that every day. So I was like, I'm just not in on this. And because I get a lot of calls for people wanting me to be kind of the guy at the front of their organizations. And it just made me sick. And she goes, well, here's the rules. First rule is it's for anybody. I was like, okay. not just veterans. All right. And I'm nothing against veterans. You know, I'm a fan of veterans.
Right. No.
But veterans have a place to go. They've got 1,000 places to go. Law enforcement, they may not have 1,000, but they got 950 places to go. Your neighbor, where can they go? Where do they go if they need help? Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing she said is, you got to have a job. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's not for the extremely poor and it's not for the rich, because the poor have places to go and the rich don't have to worry about it. It's for the blue collar dude or dudette that's going to need that help. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. What else? And she goes, 100% of what we take in is going to go to help people. Not one dime will be taken out by us for anything. 100% goes to help people. And I'm like, I can get on board with this.
Right.
So we're not big. Like, we're not a big, we're not the, and I'm not going to name names, but there's people out there that take in a lot of money and then they put half of that in their pocket and then they help some people and they make a lot of really fancy Instagram posts. And man, they are really, really awesome, at least in their own mind.
Right.
For us, we take in enough that we've been able to help everybody that's asked us for help.
That's awesome.
Or I should say, everybody that qualified needing help. One year, we got a call at the end of the year, and my wife come to me and she said, well, we got this request and we don't have the money. What do you want to do? I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And she goes, well, I look at this as our tithe. We'll just pay for that. You and I will pay for that. Kyle and the Lamb will pay for that. I'm like, so we made that decision. My wife went to the mailbox that day. She opened the mailbox and she pulled it out, and there was a check from a friend of mine. And that check was exactly what we needed for that
awesome.
need. That's not us. That's a God thing.
That's
there.
divine.
The next year, we were within 11 cents of what we took in to what went out.
That's incredible.
So we're doing the right thing, I think, on that. So for people out there that want to, to give money, you can go to our website. You can go on the Stay in the Fight Foundation and donate that way. If you want to do a tax-free thing, we do that as well. And we'll send you a receipt for that.
Can you tell them what the website is?
VikingTactics.com.
Okay. So just go to
VikingTactics.com. You'll see Stay in the Fight Foundation at the top. Hit that, go in there and you can donate. Now, the other thing that happened about this same time, I got into making knives and tomahawks and stuff. I got a call from some of my buddies and they said, hey, this buddy of ours is retiring. We want to get a tomahawk. And I'm like, oh, okay. Can you make something like this? And I'm like, yeah, okay. I get off the phone and I'm like, oh crap, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I got to make a tomahawk. I suck. And now I got to make this tomahawk, So I started thinking about it. And about 2 days later, they called me up and they said, hey, we decided we're not going to get that tomahawk from you. I'm like, okay, good. Thank goodness that I don't have to do that tomahawk. I can just make what I want to make. 2 weeks later, they called me back up and said, hey, we want to order that tomahawk. We changed our mind. And I said, well, I don't take orders. And they go, wait a minute. And I go, no. When you first called, I took orders. I don't take orders anymore. So now I make what I want to make, and then
it's there.
It's there.
It's available.
So I do make tomahawks. I make knives. I just made 6 V42s. One of them didn't turn out, so it became a lot shorter knife than it was supposed to be. And I gave that to a buddy of mine. But I made these 5 V42s that had leather stacked handles. I turned all of the you're familiar with the V42.
Yep, sure.
The pommel caps are not all the same because I made all of those on my milling machine on a rotary table. I was sitting there cranking each one out. It took me like 2 hours to make each one of those. It took me 2 years to make these knives. And then I put them out there. I had one guy that had donated a bunch of money to us, and he got the first one, a buddy of mine, Mike Naztek, who's just a super dude. Him and his wife, Denise, are just awesome. And then other guys started asking me about these. And actually, going back to a guy that we mentioned earlier, old Butt Monkey.
Yep.
He has one of those.
That's awesome.
And here's what we do. And I've had to do some soul searching here. I've told people, and I'll say this in front of God and everybody, that when I make a knife, I get what I want out of making that knife by making the knife. And my heart and soul goes into making that. And when I'm done making it, honestly, if it got thrown in the trash, it wouldn't matter to me because
that's your meditation.
That's my meditation or whatever you want to say.
I totally get it.
That gets my mind right. And I will say this though, when I tell people give till it hurts, you got to understand that I've said give till it hurts. And if they're going to be cheap and I've made a deal with them, well, they're going to get that knife, whether they're cheap or not. So some guys are a little bit more thrifty than others. And I've had other guys that have called me up and said, hey, I'd really like one of your knives. I'm going to send you a check for $5,000. And I'm like, that knife ain't worth $5,000. Well, it's not about the knife. I had another guy that called me one day. He goes, the very first V42 I made, he called me up and he goes, hey, Nils wants that knife. And I was like, I go, what? And I was just kind of joking around.
Yeah.
I said, well, what did he give me? And he goes, he'll give you $1,000. And I'm like, sold. That's awesome. Well, 2 hours later, he called me up and he goes, I just want to let you know that he decided not to give you $1,000 for that knife. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird, but
Right.
whatever. He goes, yeah, he found out it was for the Stay in the Fight Foundation. He's not going to give you $1,000 for that knife. And I'm like, I didn't care. Like, whatever. He doesn't get the knife, whatever.
Right.
He goes, he's going to give you $2,500 because it's for Stay in the Fight Foundation. And then he went a step further and he degraded me a little bit. He said, Kyle, I want you to understand, this ain't about your knives. This is about Stay in the Fight Foundation. So don't think your knife is worth $2,500 because it ain't.
Gotcha.
Now, a knife from Allen Leischwitz is worth that or more.
Right.
But a Kyle Lamb knife ain't worth $2,500. One of my buddies, who you probably know, he called me up. He goes, I really want one of those knives for my son. And his son is in the unit. And he was in the unit. He was also in Dam Neck.
Yep.
And he goes, I want to get that knife for him and I'm going to carry it overseas. And then I'm going to give it to him so he can carry it overseas. And I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Right.
So he got that knife and he carried it overseas. I'm not sure if his son has it yet or not, but he has one of those V42s too. So if people want to donate, I can't guarantee you're going to get a knife, but I can guarantee that if you donate money to Stay in the Fight, 100% of that's going to go to help people. So that's where that came from. And I
love it.
We're not a big dollar outfit, but we're the money's going to help people. It might be a battered woman. It might be, we had a little girl that needed a helmet so that, because the Army was going to cut her head open and fix her skull, or they could put this helmet on her for 6 months. Nothing against Army doctors, but they might not be the best doctors out there.
Right.
And this guy's like, this is a long shot, but would you do it? And we're like, absolutely. Boom. We bought the helmet for this little girl. 6 months later, she's completely healed. She's good to go. They never had to crack her head open. I think that's worth donating for.
Very cool.
You know what I'm saying?
Very cool. I love that. I love that. So no, everybody, I mean, if you're listening, you heard what the foundation does, and we're big on stuff like this. I think everybody's familiar with what we just did for the Veterans Medical Relief over Veterans Day. That was an amazing campaign. We partnered with Black Rifle on that. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep, I am.
And I'll tell you, I just had Bear Hanlon, our CEO, co-founder, and owner, on the podcast, and he has taken the energy off of that, and we're going to meet all the congressmen that wore Green Berets or SEAL Tridents, the VA, everything. We're on a mission to get veterans debt, medical debt eliminated. And if you knew what's out there, it's I mean, we did $11 million by ourselves the first year. We did $34 million with Black Rifle last year. The goal, and this is a lofty goal, and we're going to bring private equity in solely for the purpose of this mission. It's the 250th anniversary of our country. Our target for this year is $250 million. And if we hit that, and again, we're going to have a lot of infusion to do that. If we hit that, we will eliminate all distressed medical debt, which means people that are getting ready to lose their homes, their businesses, it'll be gone. After that, there'll be medical debt that still exists, but it'll be by people that have jobs that are paying their bills. Yeah. The other thing we are going to open up to this year, it's 250, but it's not just going to veterans. We are going to bring law enforcement, first responders into the mix as well too. It's a nationwide thing. So I totally love what your foundation's doing. It's the cause we have here too. And it's one of those things for those that are running foundations, like you mentioned, where there's more going in the pocket than going out the door. You got to sleep with yourself at night. I mean, just know that the purpose of a foundation is not the purpose of a business. right? I mean, there's a distinct difference, especially if you
I think
camouflage it.
I think what's really helped me is I'm not going to stress about what they do. I'm going to stress about what I do.
Right.
And we're doing the right thing. And I can stand in front of anybody and tell them what we're doing, and we can open up the books. You can see it firsthand. There's a company that called us up and said, we've got people that are trying to donate to your organization. Will you take the money? We're like, well, yeah. They go, well, we run it through a credit card, so we're keeping the credit card fee. And at first we're like, well, that's not really the intent here. But then we're like, yeah, we're going to take that money.
Right.
Because the credit card fee, whatever, if that's what they're doing, that's fine. You know, we have credit card fees as well. But the bottom line is, you know, once we have the money in the account, there's nothing that comes out for anything. You know, like if we go out and print pamphlets or little flyers or whatever, none of that gets charged. So that's awesome. And I there's one thing I would like to say. You mentioned it earlier, and I've been hitting the head a lot. So I want to hit this while I'm thinking about it. You know, I see a lot of veterans, and I see a lot of veterans struggling. And when I see veterans struggling, there's a couple things that I see that are happening. Most importantly, I think, is they don't have a mission. And I think that's when guys see me, they think, oh man, Kyle's got it all figured out. I ain't got it figured out. But what I do is I try to keep myself busy. And I think if I stay busy, when I'm not busy, that's when I get inside my own head. So what I would say to you, the veterans out there, is have a mission. Okay, what is your mission for today? Well, maybe your mission is to get up and go fishing. Well, then make that a mission and plan that mission, train for that mission, rehearse that mission, and then execute that mission and do it to the best of your ability. Don't just get up and go, oh, what am I going to do today? Have a mission every day that you get up. You know, if I don't have anything going on, I promise you I'm going to end up in a bad place. So if I get up and I go, okay, what do I got to do today? Well, I've already thought about the previous day. I got to write for an hour. I've got to make sure I go to the range. I got to feed the chickens or clean the chicken coop. I got to go on a walk with my wife. I've got to lift weights. I've got to, whatever it might be that I've got to do. I've got to go be on this podcast with some old, dude from the 160th, you know. I mean, you have to make time for that. But like today, this is my mission, and I want it to be a positive thing as well. And whatever you do out there, make it a positive mission. In business, they call it a vision and all this crap, which is fine. But in the military, it's a mission.
It's a mission.
And I look at that. If I'm going to go elk hunting in Wyoming, I plan it like a mission. And I want to make sure that I don't drop the ball, that I'm prepared for that mission, and I execute that mission. And executing the mission doesn't mean I'm going to kill an elk. It means that I'm actually going to come out of the woods and still have all my fingers and toes,
right? And
hopefully not frostbite. And if I get to kill an elk along the way, then that's going to be awesome too. So
now that's a great point. I do a lot of speaking on human performance, and everybody wants to talk about nutrition. Everybody wants to talk about working out, but I think the biggest part of it's the mind, an inactive mind. And you know what? I see people age faster. I see when you do not stay active in your brain and do not have a mission, right? It leads to the demons coming in, and it leads to bad things, and it leads to people going down the roads they don't need to go down. So I couldn't be any more on board with that. And I also think that the fountain of youth is taking all that together: fitness, nutrition, and a very active mind. And a very active mind, Kyle's talking about you going fishing, you're doing this. It could be picking up and reading the Bible from end to end. It could be, a deep read where you're engaging your brain and not thinking about the bullshit in life. But that's all part of it.
Yeah.
Right?
The other thing is, what have you done for other people today?
Right.
What have you done for them? And I'm not talking about going and writing a check for Stay in the Fight Foundation. I'm saying, like, can you be kind to somebody that you meet on the street that there's no reason, you're not getting anything out of being nice to that person. And that actually counts, and having humility. And I heard something on the way over here that I wanted to tell you. I thought this was good. Humility is great until you start bragging about it, because then it becomes prideful. So having humility, what does that actually mean? That's doing the right thing when nobody's watching,
right?
And doing it for that person and not for you. I'll give you an example. I got a buddy, and I've told this story a bunch of times, and I actually talked to this guy on the way over here today. So Tim, we'll call him. So Tim is just a He's just a great dude. So he sends me a text one day, and I'm in a hotel room in some city. I don't even know where I'm at. And he's like, hey man, I just want to tell you, I'm thinking about you, and I don't need anything. I'm just cheering from the sidelines. That made my week.
Yep.
So what happens if you get up in the morning and you think about one of your buddies and whether they're struggling or not? Hey man, I'm just thinking about you. That doesn't cost you a dime. And what it does to them, it helps them out, because they're like, you're on their mind for a reason. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad. Maybe they're struggling. Well, then reach out to them. Maybe you just want to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. How can we help people? How can we do something for other human beings? You know what I'm saying?
That's huge. And I'll say, and I'm gonna go to the veterans specifically on this one. We just had this discussion, and I think Norm Hooten, with his background with the VA and everything he's done, is really smart on this. But not only the buddy checks and the reaching out and exactly doing that, but also the awareness of, if you've got a guy that's been off the grid for a long time and all of a sudden 10 people hear from him out of nowhere, there's a trigger. Something's going on.
Yeah.
Everybody better reach out to that dude and find out what's going on. Because why is this person that's been off the grid for so long checking in with everybody? Are bad things coming? Or is this person just trying to re-enter into the group? But you need to figure that out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And the other thing too, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way. I'm not getting on my high horse, but I don't drink. And I don't care if people drink, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. Like, you sit down with your buddy and you have a glass of brown liquor, then that's awesome. But if you're sitting at your house drinking by yourself, I promise you that's not good. I promise you that, and I'm not throwing stones here. I'm just saying that for me, alcohol is a depressant. And if I'm in that mode, if you can not drink, then just don't drink. Now, the next time you go out with your buddies, great, good, have a beer with them or whatever you want to do. But don't think that somehow alcohol is going to fix your problems, or, drugs or whatever it might be. But the alcohol thing is that hits home with me, the alcohol and the antidepressants. And we've seen the list of people that have killed themselves mixing those two. I mean, we could sit here and start counting names. And I promise you, for the next hour, we could give you names.
Right.
And then people out there, everybody knows 10 people that had that happen.
Norm told me, and I hopefully I'm getting this accurately, but you were in Mogadishu. You were over there for their Gothic Serpent and all that. Norm was telling me that more people that were on that operation, I'm talking the total force, more people that were on that operation since that day have taken their lives than were lost on target in that basically 48-hour period. That was alarming to me. And we all know them, and we all know the names. And you're right. You and I could sit here and go for a long time, because we've been around a long time. And that's what scares the hell out of me right now. I think my biggest mission right now is the check your buddy, like who is not, and it's kind of funny, because I've been going through some personal stuff, and I have like 10 or 15 people that keep reaching out to me. And I'm like, I swear I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I appreciate it. Let's find out who that guy is. You know what I mean?
So there was 3 team leaders in C1. Matt Ryerson was killed in Mogadishu by a mortar round. John Hale, the greatest team leader I ever worked for, unbelievable man, took his own life. C team, Bravo team leader, right before the 30th, took his life. Him and Norm were close, so I called Norm up. And I'm telling you, Norm, he'd probably be mad that I'm telling this story, but I'm just going to tell it, because Norm is a guy that I 100% hold up on a pedestal. He's just that guy. He's an awesome dude. And you know him very, very well. Yep. So you know what I'm talking about. Called him up to talk to him about Boz. And he goes, yeah, man. He goes, I just know, he goes, we gotta watch our buddies. We gotta keep, and he told me exactly what you just said. But then he also said another thing. He goes, but I know that guys like you and we would never do that. And I was like,
How do you know that?
Well, let me tell you, I'd been struggling at that point. And when he said that, it really, it got in my heart. And I was like, if Norm says I'm not that guy, I need to pull my head out of my butt and not be that guy. We all have struggles. And once again, if you get inside your own head,
Right.
you don't have a mission, you're gonna have them struggles. And it's this is gonna probably ruin my reputation and yours for having me on your podcast.
I don't think so, brother.
I write poetry. And the very first, I've dabbled, when I was a kid or whatever, but I had a really bad struggle and I wrote a poem because of that struggle. And I wrote it because I kept notes in a notebook just like that right there.
Right.
And I was like, I don't ever want to forget how I felt that day. And it was a day that I actually saw Norm in person. And that night I was having this really bad night, struggling, and made it through the night. And then the next day I had to go speak in front of like 500 SF dudes, do a leadership seminar, and everything went great. But I kept looking at those notes and then I'm like, I want to remember this, so I'm going to make it into a poem. And I wrote that poem. And when I finished writing that poem, it was gone. It was just gone from, like, I can't even believe I was that guy, And so whatever it is,
therapeutic.
Yeah, whatever that therapy is, whether it's, lifting weights or hunting or fishing or talking to your buddies or whatever it is. And the other thing that Norm and I discussed on that phone call was that he said, after this year, that was the 30th, he says, I'm done with the reunion stuff, for that, because we don't need to keep reliving this. And I told him, I said, well, Norm, I'm ahead of you because I'm not even going to do that this year. And I'm not saying we shouldn't remember the fallen. I remember those guys every day. Every time I see the national anthem played at a game, I think of Matt Ryerson. And every time I say, some of those quotes that John Hale taught me, do what needs to be done. That's what he always said. Do what needs to be done. I'm not going to tell you what it means to be done. You know what needs to be done, so make it happen.
Make it happen.
That's how I pay my respects to those guys. I don't need to have pomp and circumstance to think about those guys that made that sacrifice. And Norm really, he made me be accountable to myself. And I think that we do better if we're accountable to others, and then we can take care of ourselves after that. So then that's because I see a lot of veterans are like, well, first thing you got to do is take care of yourself. I don't agree with that. I think that if you fill somebody else's cup, your cup's going to get filled as well.
Right.
So if we get out there and we do that, pretty soon you're going to be thinking, man, I got it. I kind of got this licked. This guy, look what happened to him. How, this guy's got to get up every day and deal with that problem. Let me help that dude out. Oh man, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with me.
Right.
That doesn't mean I don't have struggles, but that means that I can help those dudes out. So Norm, I don't know if you'll ever listen to this or watch it, but I have nothing but respect for Norm.
Me too. And I tell you what, I love the guy, and we actually are way beyond friends at this point and doing actual business stuff together. And I have never met a guy that is so humble and quiet, but such a genius. He tries to play off like he's this Southern country, doesn't know much guy, but that is one smart dude. I just love being around him because when he talks, I'm not an over talker. Like if you talk, I'll listen unless you're full of shit. But when Norm talks, every time he talks, I shut up because I know there's some wisdom coming. So he's just that kind of dude.
And he's always been that way.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And what's kind of funny is we're, when we did this little group thing we did together, I'm usually the old man in the room at 60. Well, I had Norm and Scotty and Dutch, and all of a sudden I realized, fuck this. And me and Pat McNamara are the same age. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm with literally my peer group right here. But every time Norm talked, I elevated Norm as like the adult in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So,
and I think so saying that, he should be an inspiration to us because guys are looking at you.
Yeah.
They're looking at me, and I want to make sure I'm given the right information. And there's two things when I've taught classes. There's the the two things that I've had more students come up and talk to me about after the class. The two things are, I'm a Christian and I don't drink. And they're like, young guys, like, how do you do that? Well, just don't do it.
Right.
Like, you're proving something by not doing it. It's easy just to do it. It's harder to not doing it, and I'm not saying I still would like to have some, I go hunting or something. Yeah, I'd like to do that. I just don't do it because that is something that makes me have to think through that,
Gotcha.
and I actually wrote a poem about that, about the liquor versus me writing poetry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that poem, when I've read it to some guys that are veterans, are like, oh man, that's a powerful poem because it speaks to that, you have a different way of getting stuff out of your soul or out of your brain or whatever versus the guy that is tamping it down with liquor. And once again, like I said, I don't care if you drink, but don't overdo it. Don't.
Now, I think it's funny you said I'm gonna lose viewership because you talk about poetry. Let me tell you something. I think it's extremely creative, and the thing I learned this, created friendship for a while, and 43 President Bush, our wartime commander. I was giving him cigars because he paints. What I did not know until the second or third box of cigars, he doesn't smoke this. He chews on them while he paints, and it's medicinal for him, and he likes the taste. And I was like, that's so cool because here I'm giving him all these cigars thinking he's smoking, but he's chewing on them and enjoying them. So I'm like, well, I'm going to give him a bigger cigar, a longer chew and stuff like that. But it's kind of cool to hear how people take their creative genius, and his was painting, and apply it to nothing in the world matters around me right now. This is my brain engaging something that I think is important, and everything else can go away. And I think when you're done with whatever that is, you feel a hell of a lot better and you return back to being almost grounded.
Yeah.
So
my daughter was giving me a hard time. She's like, Dad, your poems are really dark. And so I wrote a poem for her called Dark Poems No More. And in that poem, I told the story of why I write poems,
Right.
And I actually read that to her in Normandy.
Way cool.
And I got done and she was a mess. I was a mess too.
But it was the explanation, right?
And you know what she said?
No.
She goes, Dad, patted me on the knee, and she said, you write all the dark poems you want.
Very cool. She got it.
She got it. She gets it.
She totally
She's a
gets
smart girl. She
Yeah.
understands. When I wrote it that way, she understood what I was getting, why I was doing it. I'm not doing it for anybody but myself.
So are you ever going to publish the poems?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool, I think.
I read one the other day on the Aim Point podcast, and we had a lot of people that were like, I can't believe you wrote that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah, I did. So that was fine. And I've read them to other guys like in hunting camp. And the cool thing about it is I had a young Marine that we were eating chow one night up in Wisconsin. And our other buddy was a former Ranger, fire sport officer. And he goes, have you written any poems lately? So I read it. I read this poem and I got done. And the dude, he was like, oh man, what I got out of it, he got something completely different out of it. And we got this dialogue going because of that poem.
Right.
So at the end of it, he's like, I got to tell you what's happening. And he told me a very, very personal story and the struggle he was having. And I'm like, well, dude, it was something that his wife was doing and she wasn't doing it to upset him, but it was upsetting him. But he hadn't told her. Well, how does she know? So, as soon as we finished chow, I got done and I was like, I want to take this guy hunting. Because we talked about elk hunting too. So I called my buddy out in Montana. I said, hey man, I got a guy. He's the right guy. He's like, all right, what's his name and all this, 2 months later, this kid says, I hope this isn't terrible, but I wrote a poem.
Very cool.
Oh my goodness. It is just stellar. He was a Marine Raider.
Right.
And it's just unbelievable. And then he ended up writing another. He's just awesome. And he's like, I would have never guessed that poetry would be something that helped my heart. So we get out to Montana and he ended up killing an elk. It was awesome. And he read this poem to everybody and they're like, oh my goodness, you know? And he said, and by the way, I talked to my wife. We're all good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, if you're married to a woman that loves you, she's not doing things to set you off.
Right.
If anything, they're going to do things to help you, not hurt you. And his wife loves him. I guarantee that. And, you know, him seeing his kid and it was therapeutic for him as well. So we go on this hunting trip out there and we're in Montana for like 6 days. Nobody drinks. We talk about poetry. I mean, we sound like a bunch of hippies or something,
right?
You know what I'm saying? But it's what it's what helped heals us, you know?
Yeah. And I don't care who you are. If you're listening to this, if you are not 18 years old and have been through life a little bit, especially the type of lives we've lived, healing is important. Healing is important. I mean, there's trying to explain somebody. You know, I tried to tell somebody one time, people asked me, do you have demons from all the combat you saw? And I'm like, you know, I hate to come across as coarse and harsh and all that. I don't give a fuck about all the enemy that was killed on target. The only thing I remember or care about is my brothers on the left and right. That's it. That's my reflection of it, is the guys I lost. That's what kills me at night. Those are the demons, especially ones that were under my watch. So,
I heard somebody say the other day that, you know, you go through a dark time, but when you get in that dark time, the only way to get past the darkness is to shine a light on it. And for me, that really spoke to me because I'm shining a light on that stuff with the poetry or with telling a story. And then when I'm done with it, I'm done with it. You know what I mean? Like that's the yeah, whatever it takes, you know, writing stories. I love to write. So that's always fun for me. And
I think it'd be very cool if you published not only the book of poetry, but if you had a glossary in the back that was kind of the debrief of the why of each poem.
So I've actually done that. So when I write the poems, I write what I'm writing about so people understand. And one thing is,
right?
Yeah. And I want to remember that context too, because sometimes I'm like, I'll go back and read a poem. Like I got poems on my phone and stuff. And I'm like, if I don't put like the date and why I wrote it, sometimes I'm like,
what was I thinking?
Who wrote this? I read a poem to my wife one day. I'm like, hey, I want to read you this poem. And I read it. And she's like, that's really good. Who wrote that? And I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, you know. So
cool.
It's always fun. And some of them are stupid, but others, you know, I read one to a guy that was on my assault team for a long time, and it choked him up. And then I was riding in a vehicle with 3 guys that I served with, and one of the guys goes, yeah, I heard about your hunt. I heard you were reading poetry to everybody. I said, yeah, you want to hear some? Yeah, I want to hear some. So we got to the hotel we're going to. We all sat down around a table and they all got a drink, and I got a glass of water, and I read them a poem, and I got done and I looked at them. Every one of them was jacked up.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
there you go.
I nailed it.
There you go.
Because you've had the exact same thoughts I've had.
Right.
You know? So, you know, and also some of it is, I'll read something to my wife and it'll incite a discussion that really helps me. Like I'll say something and she's like, well, you got to remember, you know, like one I wrote about the darkness and the light and how I hid in the darkness, because that's how we operated. We operate in the dark, and we shine the light on evil, but we never shine the light on ourselves. And I'm going to tell you, we're just as evil as those guys. Some people aren't going to like to hear that, but there's some evil that was going after some other evil. And I'm not saying that we can't repent for our sins, but I'm saying that there's sometimes that I look back at that and I'm like, why were we even doing that? And that's kind of what that poem said. And my wife said, you got to remember that you're a soldier. We don't get to pick and choose what theater of operations we get to go and do missions in.
Right.
So don't hold yourself responsible for going and doing what your country asked you to do. I don't have any regrets for that. That poem kind of sounded like I did, but I just wanted to kind of, like I said, shine the light on us hiding in the darkness and putting the light on what we perceived as evil, when in fact, we have to be pretty ruthless to do some of the stuff we did.
Absolutely.
And if you're not ruthless, if you can't do that, what your country asks you to do, then definitely don't sign up for the military. I mean, we did it. And I don't have any regrets either. I definitely don't have any regrets. I would say I have regrets of stuff maybe I didn't do, or I could have done better.
That's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I could have led better. And I think that guys that say, I never did anything, I have no regret. I have regrets of, at certain times, maybe I didn't lead my guys correctly, or I didn't follow correctly. But I didn't, maybe there's times I didn't stand up when I should have stood up.
Right.
And that's probably the worst thing is when you see something going sideways and not standing up and saying, whoa, wait a minute, stop. What are we doing here?
Yeah, you can't come in after and throw the axe either, because you missed the opportunity to do that. So I get it. And hindsight can kill you, especially, with the type of up tempo we had and the type of operations we had. And to me, I do the same thing. And mine have always come into play when there's been a loss of life, one of ours, where I was a key leader and I had influence over the environment. And sometimes you have to sit with somebody else and have them give you the look, dude, if you hadn't done these 5 things, there'd probably been a lot more loss of life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And you need to hear those things sometimes, because sometimes you start putting yourself in this own persecution. I've gotten to a point where between active duty and my time after with the government that I don't hold myself accountable for loss of life. I do hold myself, just like you said, accountable for decisions I made that I maybe could have done different. And I think that's what a professional does. So,
well, we got to hot wash everything, and that's the strength of what you're doing here. We're hot washing kind of what I've done in my past, what you've done in your past, and we're bringing those lessons learned to the forefront so that maybe guys that have the same experience as us can learn from us. Maybe guys that don't have that experience can learn from us. I want this to be a positive thing. I don't want people to take it away and go, man, Kyle Lamb is a douchebag.
Right.
I want them to take away that, hey, he struggles, Bruno struggles. We've all had struggles, but it's what you do coming out of the other end of that. I've had a lot of guys say, oh, you wrote a book. I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, well, what do you read? I don't read. And I'm like,
good luck.
If you don't read,
how do you write? Yeah.
You might not be able to write a book. Oh, this is going to be terrible. My what do you call it on social media? Your clicks, your whatever, your likes or your following is going to go way down. But my buddy that helped me with that book, Matt Busella, he sent me 4 books. Not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before. He sent me The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Goodness.
And I was like, I called him up. I'm like, bro, remember you were in the Navy. I was in the Army. Why did you send me? I mean, come on, bro. He goes, well, when you get a chance, crack open The Hobbit and see what you think. I started reading The Hobbit. It's one of the best books I've ever read.
Powerful read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then here a month ago, I started reading The Lord of the Rings. And where I'm going with this story is other writers, I start picking up like where they got stuff from. Like in Lord of the Rings, the guy says he was sucking on his teeth. So Harrison Cohn, if you're listening, I know where you got that from in your books. He got it from Lord of the Rings. When I write about alluvium, do you know what alluvial is?
I do not.
So when a river takes a turn and you got that silt that comes out from it, it's called alluvium.
Okay. Alluvial
soil. The guy that always used that in almost every writing he ever did was Teddy Roosevelt.
Really?
That's his word, alluvial, alluvium.
So you know where it comes from.
I know exactly where it comes from. You know, I read one of Jack Carr's books, and I'm like, I called Jack up. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. And I said, hey, I just read this book, and I was wondering. And I told him about this other book, and he goes, you're the first guy that's picked up on that. It was a Louis L'Amour book.
Very cool.
And he's not copying Louis L'Amour, but his
creative genius.
Yeah. It's just like when I read this Louis L'Amour book and I read the book from Jack Carr, I knew like it's the same like structure
Right.
for this, you know what I mean? So it's always fun as a writer to start to get into the brain of another writer. And then some books, one thing I will tell people out there is if you start reading a book and it sucks, don't finish the book. Because I'm terrible. When I start reading a book, I'm like, I gotta finish this book. And then it's like, I finished it and I feel dumber for having read that book. So if you have a book that you start to read and you're struggling, just don't read it.
Move on.
Yeah, move on to another book,
Gotcha.
I usually read about a dozen books at one time.
At one time.
At one time. So in my office, when I sit down, I've got a table here to put my coffee on, and I've got a bookshelf right beside me that can be rolled. My wife got it for me because I got a lot of books. I got a big bookshelf in my office with a ladder that you got to slide back and forth, just because I wanted to have a ladder and a bookshelf.
Got it.
And I have all these books that are sitting right there that are very dense books to read. Some are by Jordan Peterson, great writer, but they're hard to read. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, hard to read, but they're great books. Some history books where, it might be something about World War II. It might be some are fictions that I, have taken me. Once an Eagle or something like that might take a little bit to get through. But I have all these books there. And then I also have a lot of these books for reference, like Josephus. Are you familiar with Josephus? Yep. So Josephus, not Bocephus. I like his writing as well, but Josephus was Jewish and he lived during the Roman era in Jerusalem and was a historian. And we can take his writing and compare it to the Bible and then compare it to some of the other things that we think we know. And like, he's given us firsthand information. So a lot of times I'm reading something, I'm like, did that really happen? And it's really cool okay, here's one for you. Copper.
Okay.
Where did the copper come from in the Middle East during Jesus's time? Or actually during like King David's time?
No clue.
I didn't know. And I'm like, how did they get their copper? So I started researching and it said they got it from England. And I'm like, there's no way they got it. Wasn't England.
Right.
It wasn't even Britain or anything
Right.
like that at the time. It would have been, I don't even know what it would have been at that time.
Right.
Well, who was alive during that time? Josephus. I go in there and I start searching for copper. Guess what I found?
The origin of it.
The exact same reference that led me to know that in the Bible and in history, the two came together and they got that. And modern technology has allowed us to find copper. So the reason I went down this, my bunny holes are ridiculous. I just read Alice in Wonderland like a week ago. And the reason I read Alice in Wonderland was because J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, who was buddies with C.S. Lewis.
Yep.
They're both World War I vets. They both end up becoming Christians. J.R.R. Tolkien was a Christian, and then he helped convert C.S. Lewis, and he wrote, amazing stuff, the Narnia Chronicles and all these other, The Great Divorce and all these great books. What influenced J.R.R. Tolkien? George MacDonald. George MacDonald wrote a book called Fairy Fantasies for Men and Women or something like that. And I read that book years ago. It's a great book, but it's like, it's about,
it's almost cross-referencing everything.
Like fairies. Like I'm a fire breather. I shouldn't be reading about fairies, but it's great writing. And then I read about him, and he influenced a guy named Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland.
Gotcha.
So I picked up Alice in Wonderland, and I'm like, I got to read this. I've never read Alice in Wonderland. That is a twisted book, but it's well written. You know what I mean? Like you can visualize this, and like what I said there was, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole.
Right.
Well, Alice went down a rabbit hole, literally.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So that's how I get to all this stuff. Anyway, I'm writing this book and I'm reading about Ehud, the assassin, making his dagger out of bronze. How do you make bronze? Tin and copper. You heat them up in two separate crucibles.
Right.
You pour them together, stir them up, heat them up again. And then what do? You pour them into a form. You make a wooden copy of whatever you're going to make, whether it's a gladius or a dagger like he made, which, they say was like 18 inches long, which I don't know if that's right because he concealed it here and he had to be really tall if that was 18 inches.
Right.
So when I read that, I'm like, well, I want to know more. Like, where'd you get the copper from? Oh, wait a minute. And then I went down the bunny hole.
And it got you down.
And if you go down the bunny hole, guess what? You're going to learn You're definitely going to learn something.
That's so cool.
And then if you go back to the training, and I'm going to take this full circle. So this is going to go back to the tactical guys there. What did Josephus quote about the Romans when he saw them training? He said their drills were like bloodless battles and their battles like bloody drills.
Okay, then.
Is that what you guys did? 160th? That's exactly what you did.
That's right.
When you guys flew during mission prep and training your guys, you did it exactly the way you're going to do it in combat.
Yep.
You didn't say, well, we're going to do this daylight and we can do it at night if we have to in combat. No, negative.
No, negative.
You trained exactly the way that you fought. And when I read that about the Romans, who at the time were the most powerful army on the planet,
Right.
even though that was kind of a small part of the world at the time, or it is a small part of the world right now, but the Romans trained exactly the way that my former unit trains. And they learned that from knowing what's the best. And the Romans at the time were the best army
Right.
at the time. And then there's other things too that I picked up, you read about that. So you're familiar with obviously the leadership in Rome. They had the leaders below like King or Emperor Nero and some of the other, all the different Caligula and all these
Right.
guys. They had a layer below those guys, and they were called the not the horsemen, but what was the name for that leadership, that caste? I'm trying to think of the correct terminology. But bottom line is they were the people that owned horses.
Right.
So that was how that caste system was set up. Did you own horses? Then you can be part of that caste system. That tells me that you have enough money, because horses were a luxury that the normal people didn't have.
Right.
What about the centurions? The centurions had this thing called a selection process. That's why they were better soldiers than those that were picked because they owned horses or because their mother had sex with the previous king. And then they were, all this crazy Bush family type stuff, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or whatever family you want to pick out that did stuff like that. Maybe the Bush family is a bad example for that. Maybe the Kennedy family is a better
There you go.
example there. But the bottom line is the centurions had a selection process. And to be selected as a centurion, you had to, and it had nothing to do with how much money you had in your wallet. It had to do with you as a fighter.
Fuck yeah.
And I think that's kind of that full circle to take you back to the equestrian class.
There you go. Gotcha.
That's that class of people. And that's something, dude, I've been reading all since Earl Fillmore made me start reading. I never read that before. And then all of a sudden, probably 2 months ago, I'm like, equestrian class. And I started digging down that rabbit hole. And we're lucky because right now we can be super smart, or at least we think we can, because we can go on Google. And I got a really good deal the other day. I bought 10 Google searches. I have 2 left. If you want to, I can give you one of them. So there's just so much information out there. But
there is.
Josephus, that's a book that I keep right there. I've got the Bible, of course, because the Bible, I can always cross-reference everything with that. And you want to talk about warriors and how we perform. When you look at, there's a lady in the Bible named Deborah, who's one of the female judges, one of very few. She was asked by Baraka to help her go and fight this guy named Sisera. And Sisera came with all his chariots, and he didn't have the high ground, but he's like, we got chariots. We're going to crush the Jews. We're going to just destroy them. So what does he do? He gets in the low ground, gets in a wadi, thunder, lightning, big rainstorm, just like on Bugs Bunny there,
Oh, yeah.
And next thing you know, all of their chariots are stuck in the mud. What do our guys go down and do? They start killing these guys because they can't get out of their chariots. They're murdering them right there. Not murdering them, they're killing them because they're soldier on soldier. Sisera takes off running, and he runs up to where the Kenites were at. So they're not Israelites, they're Kenites, another tribe. And in that tribe of Kenites, there was a lady named Jael. You remember her? Jael, her husband was kind of a powerful dude. So on the outside of their tent, they had some special markings. So Sisera was like, she's praying. She's like, Lord, what do I do? They're putting the hand on us. What do I need to do? And God told her, like, I got a mission for you, gal. Just trust me on this one. She's like, okay. So the sun's coming up. just rained, and you think like in the Middle East when it rained and you get that little coolness and that clear smelling air. And she opened her tent flap, and here comes this guy running. It's Sisera. And he's like, I'm coming in your tent. You're going to hide me. Not, can I come in your tent? He says, I'm coming in your tent. You're going to hide me. And she's like, got it, God. So she closes the door, and he says, give me water to drink. Not, do you have water to drink? Give me water. And she's like, I'm really sorry, but I only have this skin of milk. So she feeds him some milk out of this leather skin. He falls asleep, covered up with a rug on the floor. And then she does what every good warrior woman does. She took a tent peg and she drove it through his head with a hammer and pinned his head to the ground.
End of mission.
End of mission. Sisera's done. Deborah and Baraka, they win. I mean, warriors, that's right. That's an unbelievable warrior thing to do. And then one of the other chapters in that book is about Queen Esther. Esther and Mordecai. Esther ended up being married to King Xerxes, and they lived in the palace in Susa. And I wrote that chapter. And what was really cool about that is when I went to Normandy, we went to the Louvre. Here I go. I'm going to give up all my cool man cards again. So I go in the Louvre to look at, some of the cool stuff that's there. And one of the things that I saw was one of the buttresses from the palace at Susa. And those things were like 16 foot or 30 foot tall. They're this big around. And at the top of them, they got a bull head going in both directions. Those came right from where she lived with King Xerxes. And so I wrote that as a real special operations, like you've infiltrated inside the king's court, right, with a Jewish girl who's renamed Esther. And what ends up happening there? She ends up saving all the Jews, not just in that area, but in the entire Persian Empire. They were able to, between her and her cousin Mordecai, who raised her from being a little girl, they were able to save the Jews.
When does this book come out?
Well, like I said, it's at the unit right now.
Okay.
They might want to redact it a little bit. And this book got redacted as well.
Yep.
And I'm a little different, I guess, than some folks out there because I don't fight. Like, I don't want to disrespect anybody at the unit or any current or former unit members. So I was just like, it's out. Like, I'm not going to twist it, or it's just out.
Right.
It doesn't matter to the reader. It only mattered to me. So it's just out. We'll do the same thing with that book. They're very quick about getting through it, And actually the guy that redacted that, he's like, man, I really want to know when this book comes out. This is really good. And I was like, okay, so then now this one will get redacted. And then the guy that is my editor is at the time, I don't know if he's in this book, if he's a sergeant first class or a master sergeant, but he's a guy I met in 10th group. He used to be a school teacher. We got to talking. My daughter edited the first book. The last two books, he's edited. Kevin Dorsch is his name. And his last job before the job he has now, he was the command sergeant major in charge of 10th group.
That's awesome.
And he is the editor for that book.
That's
so it's
cool.
We say this all the time. You want to be evenly yoked. And I definitely want to be evenly yoked with the people that I'm working with.
Right.
Like you, we're evenly yoked because of our backgrounds, our mindset, just our ethos that we try to follow. We're not going to agree on everything, but I know that we're pulling together.
Right.
You're in a different company than I'm at. I mean, Born Primitive and Viking Tactics, we're not doing anything together yet, but I know that we're evenly yoked. And a guy like Kevin, I've seen his struggles.
Right.
And we're evenly yoked.
That's perfect.
Matt Busella, we're evenly yoked. My wife and I, we're evenly yoked. And this new book that's coming out, I told my wife the other day, I said, I really wish that we would put your name on the cover. And she's like, no. Because she's like, no, she wants no fanfare, no nothing. She's like, I'm just doing what needs to be done. And I said, Melinda, this book would not be what it is without you. Because first of all, you made me make it the book that it is.
Dedicate the forward to her. There you go. Right? Like
come to me about 2 weeks after that. She goes, I've been thinking about this. Do you think it's wrong if I have my name on that book? And I said, no, it's not wrong. And I said, I'm going to tell you another reason it's not wrong. I said, because remember when we were in New Mexico? And she goes, yep. And we talked about that. I'm in New Mexico speaking at a church. There's 500 people there with their families. And my wife is sitting in the back pew. And there's a group of derelicts sitting in front of her because all the people that you and I work with are derelicts.
Right.
And one of these derelicts has her wife there with him. And the reason I went to New Mexico was not for me to pour into those other guys. It was so that my wife would talk to that lady that was sitting in. That's the only reason we were there. And I told her that. I said, that's the reason, because people are going to read that and they're going to be like, okay, Kyle Lamb, he's cool. We know what he did, but his wife is right beside him, and we've been married 39 years. 39 years. And it hasn't all been roses and daisies and puppy breath smells. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, we've had some tough times, but we're still together. We're still a team. And like I said, I hope I don't get struck by lightning when I release that book, because I've done a lot of stuff I'm not proud of, but I'm forgiven and saved. And I hope some young men and women can read that book, or old men and women. They read it and they're like, man, this speaks to me. Now I want to go read some more about this,
Yeah.
And know what comes out at the end of it.
I love it that it has a powerful message to it. It's not just a piece to read and put down.
It's way more important than anything I've ever written.
That's awesome. I love it.
So
let me ask you a question. It can be from active service. What's who and what was said to you that was like the most influential thing in your life that you can recall? Like who changed your azimuth, whether it was a young operator?
I can answer that very simply. And I already said it earlier. John Hale.
Okay. Do
what needs to be done. I walked into that troop classroom and I see this barrel chested, you knew John, right? Yeah. His shoulders were this wide and his chest was that thick.
Oh yeah.
The guy was just unbelievable. And he welcomed me to the team. He said, yeah, I'm John Hale. They call me Lumpy. Him and Matt Ryerson are the guys that gave me my call sign, which is Sod Buster.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, you come from some sod house in South Dakota, you old Sod Buster, and that's from the movie Lonesome Dove. They said that. And he said, welcome to the team. We're very, and that's something to have a guy that has more experience in his little pinky fingernail than I have in my entire body. And I was an E6 at the time, a cherry E6. And he said, welcome to the team. He looked me in the eye and he said, do what needs to be done. No. So I'm stupid. So 2 days later, I went to him and I'm like, hey, I'm looking, what do I need to do? And he goes, what did I tell you? You said, do what needs to be done. And he goes, then do what needs to be done. If I got to tell you, I can tell you, but I'd prefer if you looked around you,
figure it out,
and you do what needs to be done. And that means if you walk by the trash can and it's full, empty the daggum trash. If you can figure out a better way for us to skin the cat, whether it's how we load out our vehicles, how we do shooting, and I've always thought about that, because no, I'm not going to do the shooting the way they taught me. I'm going to do it the better way, because I figured out something by shooting with Rob Latham or Jerry Barnhart or whoever, Benny Cooley. Benny's the guy that really pushed me to shoot from the support side. So you're going to learn stuff and bring it back and say, here's what we need to do because this needs to be done. There was a little trouble when I was in fifth group because I was in Arabic language school, and I come to fifth group, and it was early September, and in August, this guy named Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. So I was there for a couple days, and then I deployed overseas, and I'm with fifth group. And I didn't do anything exciting, but I'm with fifth group being a commo guy and being an 18 Echo doing my thing. And at the time, if you go to combat with an outfit like that, you get your CIB. And that's kind of a cool thing for a young soldier to get CIB, So I come back and I'm like, all right, well, the CIB orders come out I didn't get a CIB. There's 2 of us that didn't get a CIB. And I was like, so we're both like E5s at the time, I think, or maybe it might've been E6 at the time, E5 or E6. And I was like, well, come to find out, the reason we didn't get our CIBs was because the last letter that they transmitted to Big Army didn't go through on the fax machine. We were on the list, but we didn't get our CIBs. So I'm like, this is a bunch of BS. Well, I'm a new guy. What am I going to say? Hey, I want my CIB, you know? So I said something to my first sergeant, my commander, and they're like, yeah, whatever, lamb. So the opportunity came for me to go to selection. I went to selection. I made it, come back, and they're like, hey, we want you to know if you go and you don't make it, you're welcome back. And I was like, hey, bro, I already went. I made it. I didn't know that I was going to get to the unit. You're still under the gun. You know, you can get cut any day. And the day I retired, I was thinking, I got to do this right because I don't want to get fired. Like the day I'm retiring,
I got
that's a lot of stress on a dude, but that's how it was there every day. You didn't want to get fired. So I go to C Squadron, and John Hale's my team leader, unbelievable dude. We go to Somalia. He loses Earl Fillmore on our team, and Earl and him were best friends. They weren't just teammates, they were best friends. So you got to think about that for a minute.
Yep.
We come back, and John Hale said, everybody in the team room. And I thought, oh, we did something wrong. And John Hale walks in and he said, attention orders. And he read the CIB orders. And he said, you weren't meant to get your CIB with 5th Group because that wasn't really combat. And I was like, well, that's true. Because I didn't do anything with 5th Group. I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but I didn't do anything.
Right.
He goes, and Earl would be proud that you're going to wear his CIB.
That's heavy, right?
He gave me Earl's CIB. I'll tell you, I would give away my Silver Star and all this other crap, but I wouldn't part with that.
Hell no.
So John Hale was highly influential in my life. And in his death, he's even more influential because we don't ever want that to be repeated by any of our mates. Norm was very close to John and went through that process trying to save him as well. And it's, man, you got to learn from those, those mistakes that we make and that our buddies make. And one of the things too, I do want to say is when somebody like that makes that decision, we got to remember that that's not on us. Because I think a lot of us, we carry around the weight of guys that do that. We carry that in our rucksack. And I'm going to tell you, that's not on us. Do we want it to happen again? No. Do we care about that guy? Absolutely. But them taking their own life, that's not on us. And we're not the great physician. There's only one great physician. So we need to make sure that we don't try to overinflate our importance because we're not the one that can stop that. We can try to help and try to mitigate that. But if they make that, don't let yourself get ate up because something like that happens. I had a buddy of mine, the Righteous Duke. He told me that, and I got off the phone. I'm like, I gotta tell Tom Spooner this because I know Tom. He's dealing with this all the time, working with Warrior's Heart. And I call up Tom, and Tom and I are very, very good friends. I was his OTC instructor. Great dude. He has saved more people's lives than we can ever imagine. Them and the other angels that work there at Warrior's Heart. And I told him this, and he goes, yeah, bro, I know that. And I was like, well, dude, why didn't you tell me? And he goes, well, you probably weren't ready for it yet. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to make sure we tell people that so they understand that we're doing the best we can, but we can't be held responsible for somebody else making that decision because we got enough to carry in our backpacks without adding another rock to our rucksack. You know what I'm saying? I agree
with you 100%, brother.
So
any final thoughts or comments? Anything you'd like to talk about?
I think we've covered most of it. I think
I will, just so you hear it from me, you have totally sparked my interest in a read. I've always wanted to do it. I'm going to find a place in life where I can go cover to cover. And
So let's make a deal right now in front of everybody. So you got to stick with it.
okay,
As you do that, I want you to stay in touch with me
of course,
because I want to hear
my perception.
your perception of some of these stories when you hit them and you read about Ehud the assassin or Benaiah,
Yeah.
Joshua, David.
And that is, to me, honestly, I've always wanted to do it for self reasons, but hearing what you've pulled out of there tells me there's a lot in there I need to know. I mean, that is stuff that it's what we do, right? It's what we've done our whole lives.
Yeah.
So, and I think that will be good for the soul to hear that. And there's a good buddy of mine who's one of our ambassadors, and I've only known him for 4 years now. Former police officer, Blake Cook. He is very into faith, and him and I talk about it a lot because we've helped each other. When I met him, he was close to doing something bad. But long story short is I've said the same thing to him. I think it's time to act now. So just for me. But yeah, I would. And I'd also like to, if I get to a point where I'm questioning something, have that phone a friend of like, hey, how did you take this? What did you get out of this exact part right here? So
Yeah, and I think we also have to remember that, this wasn't written in 2025 or 2026. Right. It was written a long, long time ago. And God's not the author of confusion. So if you're confused, it's because we're down here. We don't quite understand it yet. Some people try to overthink, what's going on. But the bottom line is this: you don't ever have to read the Bible to be saved. Because you look at people in China and other people that came before the Bible existed, before the 1500s, and other parts. I've read parts of the Bible that didn't make the cut. And some of those are very, very good, but because of the canonical or however they say it, that didn't make it into the Bible. I'm like, man, this should have been in there because this was really good. But it doesn't hurt to dig deeper, into any of those things. And then the other thing that I've learned is I was with my buddy, Shane Fujinaga. He's a Hawaiian guy. So he's got fingers like this big around. He's just a stout dude and brah, he says brah a lot. And I was talking to him and I just met him. And we got on this conversation, and I was kind of struggling with some decisions I'd seen one of my buddies make. And I was like, it's kind of bothered me. And he said, and this is not what the Bible verse said, but this is what I took away. Wide is the road, but narrow is the gate that leads to righteousness. Now, that's not what the Bible verse says, but that's what I took away from it. And why did I take that? Because that's what I needed right then in my heart. Because if I was causing others to stumble, then they weren't going to make it through that narrow gate. So that's one of the things I try to do. Like I said, with my training, if I can get those two things across to guys, I can help them more than they can go learn shooting from anybody.
Right.
But these other little things, I'm willing to talk about that openly. I'm not ashamed of my faith. I'm not ashamed of my family. I'm not ashamed of the struggles that I've had. I've got to make sure I don't help other people stumble because of what I do on the range, what I do in my posts on social media. Because I see guys that post stuff and I'm like, would you say that to your mom? You know what I mean? Like we're trying to bring other people in. We're not trying to push people away. I don't want to push anybody away. My neighbors, I got neighbors, not many of them, that had, Harris bumper stickers. Does that mean I'm not going to stop and help them if they need help on the side of the road? No, because it says I'm supposed to love my neighbors.
Right.
They're my neighbors. Can I tell you one more quick story?
Absolutely.
So this guy, big Mexican, I'll call him. So I'm on the range up in SIG Academy, and there's this big Mexican dude on the range, big guy. And I should have known that most Mexicans are not named Sharif.
Right.
Not really a
Mexican name.
Colloquial Mexican name, right? So I'm like, where is this guy from? So as we're loading mags, I'm listening to him over at the table, and he's something, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I grew up in Egypt. And I'm like, I'm in Nasser from Egypt. So I speak colloquial Egyptian Arabic. Not real well, but that's the language I was trained in. So I waited until I could come up with my best second grade statement to say to this guy, and we finished loading. We got out there and we shot. And I'm not even thinking about the drills. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to this guy.
Right now?
He goes and loads mags, and he's over there loading. And I walk up and I lay out this Egyptian Arabic, and he stops and he gets this big grin on his face. And everybody else looks at me like I got an appendage growing out of my forehead.
That's right.
And he goes, "You just spoke Arabic in my dialect." And I'm like, "Roger that," you know?
Right.
So we start talking about that. Obviously, he's not Mexican, he's Egyptian. And since then, we have become very, very good friends. And he's Muslim. I'm not. And like I said, you're supposed to love your neighbors. And he's my neighbor because we're on the range together. He's my neighbor, right? He's done more for my faith than any other person in the last 10 years.
Really?
And that's one of those things I want people to think about, that if you just get a chance to talk to people, you know, and here's the thing. So who does he believe is the Messiah? Jesus. Who sits at the right hand of God? Jesus. Who's coming in Revelation? Jesus. I wasn't taught that in the Army, because then I probably wouldn't hate the Muslims as bad as we did. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's
Right.
a lot of similarities that we have. I'm not saying that I'm pro-Islam. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I'm going to convert. What I'm saying is I love that guy like a brother, because we're both God's creatures. And I think that a lot of times we try to drive this wedge in between us and Muslims, or us and Israelites, or whoever. And, you know, some guys are like, well, you know, it's like, hey man, if you read the Bible, because if you look at the Quran and you look at the Bible and you look at what our beliefs are as Christians and what the Jews' beliefs are, there's some difficulties there as well. That doesn't mean I'm going to start hating Jews, or I'm going to start hating, you know, Buddhists or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that we need to take away from that, is that it's very powerful when a guy like that is an open book. He sent me a text one day, and I got it, and it just totally, my head just started smoking, and I had transmission fluid coming on my ears, and it was a mess. The Jesus nut flew off, you know. I mean, It was a mess, because Sharif sent me a Bible verse from the Bible. So I read it, and it was like, it's exactly what I needed that day.
Right.
So 2 days later, I still couldn't get out of my mind, like, this guy is a Muslim and he sent me this verse. I call him up. I mean, you know, we always rap in Arabic a little bit until he's got the 5 words that I know, and then we go on
It's
to
time to move
English,
on, right?
you know? And I said, "Why did you send me that?" He goes, "I just felt like you needed it." And I said, "But you sent it from the Bible." And he goes, "Well, I thought if I sent it from the Quran, you might not take it the right way." He goes, "But it says the same thing in our book."
Right.
So this guy loved me enough to take the time
To reach over.
and find that in the Bible
Right.
and share that with me,
That's awesome.
because he loves his neighbor too.
That's right.
So, you know, if people would get rid of some of that, I mean, if you need to be hated, I'm good at hating stuff too, but I don't think that we need to just cover ourselves in hate. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's good to have an enemy. I don't know that he needs to be my enemy. And I think that there's probably some other evil
There's plenty out there.
that's being done
We
that
know
we
there's
can
plenty out
that
there,
we can
right?
focus on.
We can focus on that. There's plenty
So-
on it. And it's even funny. Like I don't do the politics thing. I just know you said it earlier. We as soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen don't get a vote. We go execute. And I don't know how many people ask me how I feel about Venezuela. First of all, I feel fucking proud that operation was executed with the utmost precision. And it goes to show every one of our foes out there, we are still here. We don't fuck around. And I don't care what the politics are. The soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines went and executed what they were tasked to do, and they did it with utmost precision. That's what this country's about, and that's what the military's about. But at the end of the day, when you start looking at, you know, does that mean if my neighbor was Venezuelan, I would have an issue? Absolutely not. It's just a different.
Well, because your neighbor, if he's Venezuelan, he's going to be happier than we are that happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, we all know that, but I totally get the point. I think it's a great point. And I think that, this is a country that was built on immigrants also to, if you really want to look at what built us to begin with. And yes, we could go off on all the tangents about this, that, and the other, but in whole, most of the people that come here for the American dream. It's that freaking simple. It is that. I mean, there's a reason you see people wearing American rock and roll shirts in Beijing, China. Everybody wants to be like Mike. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my grandpa, both of my grandpas came over here. My one grandpa from England, Grandpa Lamb, came when he was 6. And my grandpa Peterson from my Viking heritage in Sweden, he came when he was 18 or 19 years old. Didn't speak English and ended up couldn't get work, so he ended up in South Dakota building church steeples, scared of heights, him and his brother, but they needed money. My other grandpa was so young that they ended up in South Dakota being farmers, and they had nothing. They gave up everything. Just think about that. Like, they gave up. There was no internet. No. There was no FaceTime video or anything like that.
Across the ocean.
They come across the ocean.
Unknown.
They told my Grandpa Lamb, my great Grandpa Lamb, and my great grandma, they said, if he's not better tomorrow, we're throwing him overboard because we don't want everybody to get sick, because my grandpa was sick. And the next day they're like, no, look, he's good, and I knew my Grandpa Peterson, but I never knew my Grandpa Lamb. But I always think, it's weird because he would have spoke with an English brogue. And my Grandpa Peterson, when he died, he was 96, and he still struggled a bit with English because he always was surrounded with other, Scandinavians there.
Right.
And because there was plenty of those in where we grew up, and now fast forward, I've got, my daughter ends up being stationed in England, and then my grandson starts speaking with an English accent.
That's so
now, he lost it as soon as I kind of wish he still had it, but he still says rubbish and Zed. And, like all those, he used the stuff he learned when he first started school. He still uses all that terminology, but, and he couldn't be more red, white, and blue, but he's just he's a character. But
no, I love it, man. And same. I'm adopted. My parents were both Norwegian, a 6'5" and a 5'11" lady, and they came to New York City. They did not do well in the States, and they ended up putting me up for adoption. They went back to Norway. So 100% Viking blood. We have that bloodline we share. But yeah, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for immigrants.
My wife comes from a family called Gisselbeck. And they only got that name because when they come through Ellis Island or wherever they came in, my Grandpa Peterson came through Ellis Island, and they misspelled Peterson and made it the American spelling of Peterson.
Right.
Lamb survived because they could figure that out. But her family, Gisselbeck, she told me one time, she said, anybody that's Gisselbeck, I'm related to. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool,
Right.
So I'm walking through the SHOT Show, and I'm looking at people's badges. I'm always looking,
right.
This guy's walking up, and his name is Steve Gisselbeck. And I'm like,
come here, you.
So I look at him, I go, Steve Gisselbeck. And he looks at me, Melinda. And it's her cousin. I'm like, okay, well, she's right.
She's right.
She's absolutely right. Yeah, she was absolutely right.
That's
so
awesome.
He's retired now. I got a text from him yesterday. He's a retired highway patrolman from Missouri, but he was former Marine as well. So man, it's just I am glad we have immigrants because that's how we got here. I'm glad that the Indians started it by, immigrating from wherever they came from, and us coming from wherever we came from. But we'll get it.
One collective pool of badass people. I love it. I'll tell you, and we're going to finish up with this. If you have not traveled the globe and been to, and I'm not just talking about the really gorgeous exotic places, been to the places that, we've seen, you don't realize what a great country this is, what freedom really is, how great America is, and that even being poor in America is being better than being anywhere else there is. It's a great country.
You also don't realize how brave people can be. Those people in Iraq that were giving us information that ended up dead because they were giving information to the Americans. They were brave people.
That's right.
They were very, very brave, and they're dead. They're gone.
They're gone.
And and you always think like, what's your what's your legacy? Like, what did they do did they make a difference? What did we do that makes a difference? I get that question a lot. Like, what's your legacy going to be? It's like, it has nothing to do with what I did in the Army. It has zero to do with that, because when I'm 90 years old, they're going to be like Kyle Lamb. They're going to say, oh, I know Kyle's grandkids and they're awesome.
Right.
I know his kids. They're awesome.
That is your legacy.
His wife put up with him for all those years. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, that's your legacy. So a lot of times we try to think that, what you did downrange matters. Hey, it's cool. That's what you did. I did that for 20 years of my life. I wouldn't trade that for anything, but I'm way beyond that now.
But it is what made us who we are.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
It is what made us who we are. And I don't mean what units we're in and what battles we're in. I'm talking about us, the physical person, our mindset, our ethos, our drive. Every bit of that was carved from that life. I mean, I know that. I know that the man I am today is the product of what the military fixed, which was a rebellious, out of control teenager that needed discipline and focus, and I got it. So
I will say the work ethic though came from my family. My wife's work ethic, that Midwestern work ethic, came from her family. Her dad and mom are still alive. Her dad's an old cowboy there from Gisselbeck Ranch in South Dakota. He's broken more bones than I have in my body. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's important too with our kids. We want to put a helmet on our kids and we want to protect them. It's like, let them drink out of the garden hose. Let them lick trees.
Right.
Let them scuff their knees. Let them ride a bike without a helmet. Get them out there, do stuff. I mean, sometimes people are like, your grandson has been shooting since he was 4.
Damn right.
Yeah. Absolutely. He showed up with a little elf outfit the first time we went shooting. I said, it's cold out, Denver. You want to go shooting with me? Yep. I said, put on a jacket. He comes out and he had the worst Christmas sweater ever. It was like the elf sweatshirt.
Right.
He showed up at the range the very first time with the elf sweatshirt on and he shot and he's been hooked ever since.
Perfect.
And my granddaughter, we called her Snake when she was little and it stuck because she's like a snake. You got to watch her, but they're just both awesome. And that's, like I said, that's our legacy. We need to make sure we take care of them. And I'll tell you, there's times that I didn't do the best for my family when I was serving because I was so entrenched in what we were doing with the missions and that focus. And I guess I'm trying to make up for that now. I did the best I could as a soldier and maybe I wasn't the best dad, but now I'm trying to be the best grandpa that I can be.
Yeah. And just know that I hold that same thing over myself, but I also have to tell you that, I personally feel, especially in my role as a flight lead on some of the events that we did for years and years, that by me being that ingrained in that focus in the mission is why there are a lot of kids and grandparents and stuff still here.
Yeah.
Because that there's something to be said about that no fail mission, and there's something to be said night after night after night. I tell myself often, the biggest thing I got out of military service was not the box of medals, not anything other than the brotherhood that I was allowed to be in and that I did not let down. And I will not let down until I go in. I always, I'm going to get burned on a ship. That's the way a Viking gets burned. I'm going to get put on a ship. You're going to push me out and everybody's going to celebrate. It's going to happen. It was Arlington for years. And I'm like, no, that's not how I'm going. So I'll say there's a reason I really wanted you on here. It's the same reason I wanted the Norm Hootens and some other guys, Mark O'Neill and Scotty Miller, people of our trade, of your background, that are as humble as you are, but are part of our history, are amazing. And I love having people like that in the podcast because I'm here to tell you, whether you know it or not, we've been talking 2.5 hours. And there are people.
You have to edit this down to 5 minutes.
Nah, I'm going to let this whole thing roll. There's not one thing that needs to be unedited, but people are going to know you now as a human being. First of all, they're going to know the cat's out of the bag, how smart you are. They're going to know how deep you are. And there are going to be people that I think that are in a bit of a hurt right now that the things we've discussed are going to have some outlets that they didn't have before. there's going to be some opportunities for people to go, these two guys are talking about this. Why don't I try it? And that's the magic. That's where it all counts right there. So
yeah. And if I said something or you said something that you folks out there watching, if it pisses you off, you better think about it a little bit. Because that's what I mean, when guys would tell me, like my wife, she'll tell me stuff and I'm like, no, I'm not. Yeah, she's right. Had a guy sitting at my table, him and his wife, and he got done talking. I was like, I can't believe this. And the next day I told my wife, I'm like, man, that guy, he's got some issues. And she goes, did it sound familiar? I'm like, what? She goes, it's like listening to you. Man, that hurt. But guess what? She was 100% right. And I've thought about that over and over and over, and that's where I come up with that, fill other people's glass up because it's going to fill your cup up as well. Don't, if you're doing it only for yourself when you help them, then it's not good. Do it for them.
Yep.
And that's what I would say. Reach out and help. And it doesn't have to be another military guy or a cop. It can be your neighbor. It can be,
No, you're right. And that's one thing I'll say is I've got a good friend. She's a firefighter. And she's called me out on essentially me being either over the top or being an asshole or stuff like that. And I don't even see it because it's so much our culture, the way we are. And then I sit back and think about the reference and I'm like, man, I need to do. And the person's right. But you know how many hundreds and hundreds of people I've been that way around that have never said anything to me. So how do I know?
Yeah, she loves you.
Yeah. So, it's kind of cool. It's cool to learn and grow from that. But no, I'll tell you right now, man, I love this podcast. This is, I hate to say it, but that 2 hours, 40 minutes, whatever, I will probably listen to this podcast 2 or 3 times because the learning, the things you've said in here are actually going to trigger me to make, I'm one of these guys that takes notes. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to be like, I want to, like you made 4 or 5 references that I want to really dive into. I'm like, that to me is something I need to learn more about because that is so cool. So thank you for doing that. For everybody that's been listening to us, again, I started this off with wanting to have him on here for a long time. This is, I assure you, not a one and done. I'm going to get smarter. I'm going to do some reading and I'm going to bring him back up here. And I think what we're going to do next time, because we were on a compressed timeline, is we're going to get him up here and we're actually going to go shoot and do some more fun stuff and actually make it not compressed and enjoy it. And then I think the ultimate thing to be put right in between us here would be to put Norm in here with us.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And
then I won't be able to talk though. I'll be all stage fright.
I'm telling
Norm is
you,
so amazing.
Norm will give us the floor. He's so amazing. And
did you ever hear about him getting bare bottom paddled you heard that story?
No, I'd love to hear it.
So man, this podcast is going to go for like 6 hours.
It's all right.
So Boz, we talked about him.
Yep.
Boz was one of the Troop Sergeant Majors and Norm was the other one. And Boz put out threw down the gauntlet, water polo. We're going to go play water polo. And whoever loses, the other Troop Sergeant Major gets to bare bottom paddle the other Troop Sergeant Major in the squadron bar. So I don't know, but I think the other guys might have thrown it just because they wanted to get Norm bare bottom paddled. But Boz had this vision that it would be like the Romans, and he would walk down through everybody, and we'd go, oh, and then as he brought up the paddle, we would go silent, and then he would hit him with the paddle. Boz made a paddle, and he engraved C2 in it, routered C2 in there. Norm dropped trowel all the way down, bent over the couch, and here comes Boz. Oh, we do that. And he raised the paddle, and we all went silent, and he hit Norm so hard that he cracked that paddle. And Norm had a raised C2 on his butt for several weeks. But he took it. I mean, he took it.
Of course he did.
He took it like a man. I mean, he's just an animal.
I love it.
That's a guy that can do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always going to be, he might not be the best, but he's going to be one of the top 2.
Anybody that stuck it out 2 hours, 43 minutes got to hear that story. I love it. All right. So, folks, we're going to go get some lunch and talk about shit that we don't want to talk about to the public, which is, stuff from the past and all that good things. But, Kyle, I got a couple things for you, and I think this is a little bit of irony. So I did my homework, and I know you do knives and hatchets on the side. And typically the gifts I give my podcast guests are a bottle of whiskey from Norm Hooten, which I know you don't drink, or legendary knife maker Josh Smith, Montana.
Yep. I know him. Yep. Friend of mine. Yep.
He's so freaking awesome.
Him and Andrew are friends of mine.
They're great people. And I was like, what cooler thing to give somebody that makes blades? Because if you know Josh's story, 19-year-old master bladesmith and all that. So anyhow, one of the knives that I have is Mini War Goat. This is a really cool everyday concealed carry blade, but that is for you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
And then this is a talking piece. You can use it to open your freaking Pepsis or whatever, but it's a 50 cal round with the Born Primitive logo on it.
Thank you.
And then honestly, from me to you, the most important thing is every guest I've ever had on this podcast, I've given a coin from the HOTWASH podcast, because that's kind of a military tradition. And we all know the history of where it came from and, showing that I was not armed and all that. So from me to you, brother. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. Another episode of the HOTWASH by Born Primitive. Sergeant Major Kyle Lamb, it's been an honor to have you. It's kind of funny because those of you that just know him from Viking Tactics and the VTACs, now you know way more about this man, and you know the freaking motor that's upstairs there. And the thing I want to point out, the last words I'll say is, a lot of people look at soft guys as just operators that are, ruthless on target. And this man, just like Norm Hooten, just like Scott Miller, just like Mark O'Neill, showed you the depth of what's in that noodle up top to actually make these people capable of doing what they're doing. So final comments, brother.
God bless America.
God bless America. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the HOTWASH by Born Primitive Tactical. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow us at Born Primitive Tactical. I'll see you next time.